Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, beautiful people. As you can see, it is just myself and Iman in the stew. When I said Iman, I mean this handsome fella. Younger version of that, younger version of that. It's just me this morning, people. I apologize beforehand. I don't know where this is going to go, but I do know the show must go on. The show must always go on. I hope I don't pop this beautiful platform down today. Like I said, I don't know where I'm going with this. Oop, there's already somebody in the Discord coming to join me. Lovely. Good morning, Cam. Good morning, Cam. Good morning, Cam. Press the accept button and jump on stage. If not, never mind. Ah, you're here. Good morning. Sorry for my subdued energy. I am exhausted. I've had no sleep, and I'm still going. You have to press on mute. Good morning. Sorry, getting used to this. It's all right. It's cool. I got time. I got patience for you. Figure it out, and then let me know when it is that you can talk. Anywho, let me do a roll call. Oh, by the way, I have the headlines. Emmanuel has graciously done the headlines. Well, I don't know if he has, but I do know he's presented it in its proper form for me to read out to you, beautiful people. Let's see. Amy Snow Globe, good morning. DCF Mooks, Energy, TJ, No Chris, T, Dr. Amani. I hope y'all can hear me. Do I need to turn my volume up? Let me see.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Amazing. Is this Cam?
Yeah, it's Cam here.
Good morning. Is it clear over here? Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
All right, beautiful. Where are you from, Cam?
London, Northwest London to be precise.
Amazing. How old are you?
25.
25. Is it the first time on Discord?
Yeah, first time on Discord. Usually I'm a YouTube listener, but I thought, let me actually follow you guys on Discord.
All right, then. Do you normally type in live chat or no?
Yeah, I'm usually on live.
All right. So I'm guessing you have a screen name, right?
It should be on YouTube. I think it's just Cameron, to be fair.
Cameron. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me today. Before I
No worries.
Before I ask you what you would like to bring to the table, and it could be anything, mind you. It could be a tweet, it could be a topic, it could be a question. It could just be, I guess, something that I haven't thought that people might be interested in. So you have me here. I'm not talking to you, Cam. I'm talking to everybody now. You have me here, right? Brent, who has been a protector of information within the podcast community for the longest while, and I'm throwing it out there. You can ask me any question, any burning question that you've ever wanted answered. Hey, you can ask me, but only before 9 a.m. Only before 9 a.m. After 9 a.m., I'm shutting up. All right, let me continue with the roll call. Good morning, TJ. Good morning, T. Good morning, Dr. Amani. Good morning, Bex. Good morning, Mr. Ashlows. Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, Els. Good morning, 24 Lou, Christy. Shout out Christy. Thanks for coming through the other day. By the way, Christy now knows the big secret. Christy is now back in the fold. She knows the big secret. We spent a little time together after the Friday session, and yeah, she's clued in. She's mad excited. But anyway, Joyce Hanson, Bathroom Diaries, Amy Snow Globe, I said already, 9 Ether, Mobeezy, Natty, Bex, Timmy, Bathroom Diaries, who got Jen and Gist, Unknown, Bela Wal, Black Rob, Kofi, Abimi, Andrew, Archibald, Ephraim, I think that's it. I think that's everybody. Morning, and Corporate Prince. Morning, everybody. All right. So, Mr. Cam, what would you like to talk about? It could be anything.
I guess current affairs wise, I would probably say just the economic situation here in the UK. But one thing that I find even when I have daily meetups with friends and family is either everybody is depressed or seeking financial ways just to improve their wealth, which I find, especially as a community, we're not so financially literate. Especially within my family, we hate to talk about money. It's almost seen as, the other day I had a family barbecue, and I think I was the one to kind of initiate how much I'm earning, specifically what I'm doing with my money. Everybody kind of felt shy to even talk about it, or yeah, it was a weird time. I don't know how to explain it.
Are you British by way of West Africa, East Africa, or West Indies?
Yeah, so West African. My mom's Nigerian, my dad's Ghanaian.
All right. And when you say that they become anxious when speaking about money, like how does that manifest like tangibly in a practical way?
I was saying in a practical way, it's maybe not my intermediate family, but when I speak to cousins that are around the same age as myself, even probably older aunties and uncles, we never really speak about finances. If we do, it's always surface level. But to actually have a proper conversation as a family on how we can generate wealth together, I feel like we don't actually do that. And I'm not sure it's because people are anxious about speaking about their personal finances, or they feel like they can't actually talk about those things with family. I'm not too sure what it is, to be fair.
Are you currently studying?
No, I'm not studying, so I'm kind of in full-time employment now. I work in fintech specifically. So kind of tech sales.
What did you study in university?
So I didn't go to university.
Okay.
Funny enough, I took a gap year. At the time, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to study. In my head, I said I wanted to do, I think it was like international business, or something along those lines. So I took my gap year. This was around 2019. And then COVID came and lockdown. So that just kind of placed me in more confusion. So I kind of just was mainly self-taught, taught myself on coding, and kind of just upskilling myself, to be fair with you. I managed to land in a very good company, fast forward to now. But I didn't know I think the only formal learning I've had up to date was A-levels. So obviously after A-levels, took my gap year, and then that was it.
Self-taught. When you say you taught yourself coding, what are the resources that you used?
Yeah, sure. There was some online boot camps. You had to pay. And they guide you through like a 6-month process on basically upskilling you to become a software engineer. So the language that, like, for example, I chose was Python, which is quite popular nowadays. But yeah, there's a lot of online boot camps nowadays that kind of teach you. There's also in-person courses that you can do. For example, there's there was one recently with Google, and they partnered with another group to kind of offer a software engineering course with the hopes of obviously getting a job after that. Um, but yeah, it was all online via online courses.
Was it difficult for you?
At first, because I tried to do it myself, so there was no structured learning, if that makes sense. It was just me kind of watching videos online, which can be done. Some people can do that. But I think for me, I did require structure. So having that structure of having a kind of a tutor or mentor kind of made it easier for me rather than doing it totally yourself by just freestyling, which I find if you have good discipline, maybe it can work. But for me, I do feel like I need structure.
And before you took this path into fintech, were you interested in pooling resources together in order to grow family wealth? Was that an interest of yours, or did it just become apparent to you when it is that you had money to basically look after?
I would say it's always been an interest. Yeah, I definitely say it's always been an interest. Not after I saved a certain amount of money. I think it's always been in my subconscious, at least, to gather up all money or just generate wealth together for as a family.
Yeah.
So I say that's always been at the back of my mind.
And each time it is that you try to get them interested in it, there's like a wall you keep hitting.
Yeah, I would say it's hard to explain. Me, I wouldn't say backlash necessarily. More just not willing to be as open as I am. Not to say I'm perfect, but just in the sense of speaking openly about finances, down to specifically what we earn and whatnot, and how we can tactically generate wealth, whether that's through something like, for example, stocks and shares, ISO, for example. Or just a lot of things. I felt like no one's really willing to be as open. So I'm not sure why that is.
Are you an only child?
No, so I have a younger sister. I also have a half brother as well.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that you were self-taught, and I wanted you to watch this video. You may have to go back to mute your microphone and just watch it on YouTube with everybody else at the same time, and then jump back unmute and then continue talking to me, please. All right, so everybody, I'm gonna play this video. I actually want to play it out in its entirety so that you can kind of hear the context. But the last part is the title of this stream. I kind of want to start talking about this particular conversation and the ramifications of this exchange of thoughts once we finish. So please listen intently. Take this off 1.5. Nope. You could do 1.25. All right.
I think that one of the bigger, kind of the bigger picture dynamics to all of this is that we have, at least since 9/11, been in a state of perpetual war. And all of these wars have been disasters. There have been so many lies involved in selling all of them. I mean, the whole Iraq war, the whole war in Afghanistan, just lying the whole way through. I mean, I remember literally having conversations with Green Berets in the middle of the war in Afghanistan, and they're like, George W. Bush is telling you that the army we're building up there is really successful. This thing's going to fall in a week without us. And then all through the Obama administration, it's just like lie after lie after lie with disastrous wars. And so this does create a fertile ground for people to say, I wonder if they were lying about all these wars.
Sure,
again, I'm not really trying to argue about World War II. I'd rather argue about these wars today.
I think the interesting question is whether you're busy watering it.
Well, should you not talk about mistakes that were made overall?
Absolutely.
Okay, you should.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm all for going back and looking at mistakes.
So what is your argument then?
It's a very weird thing to go back, zone in on a man, say this one thing is a mistake and should characterize him, and you ignore everything else.
You're taking him out of context when you're talking about Darryl, who's done, what was it, 30 plus hours?
So what? 30 plus hours of podcasting. You do that in a week. I mean,
Yeah,
come
but it's a
on.
very different thing.
different
It's a very
thing.
different
He's
thing.
not doing a podcast like talking to people.
Okay, nor is he doing scholarly work, nor is he working in the archives, clearly. Come on. I mean, he is not the historian of our era.
He's not claiming to be.
This is the thing, Joe. This is like punching jelly.
No, but you don't consume his
around.
work.
What I'm saying, because I don't need to consume endless versions of revisionist history. I understand.
But it's
I know where
not
this comes
revisionist
from.
history. If you listen to his work, it's not revisionist history. He's basing it on historical work.
Yeah, I know. But okay, so this is my point about jelly. It's a shape-shifting thing. Comedian or historian?
He's not a comedian.
Historian or podcast? Would-be historian or actual historian? You say he doesn't claim to be a historian, but he's pumping out tens of hours of
But neither
history.
does Dan Carlin. He doesn't claim to be a historian either.
You see my point about the move? It's like some weird jiu-jitsu move.
No, I don't-
Where you say, hang on, you know all about this as well. You say, I'm not a historian, but I'm going to spend my time talking about history. I'm not a journalist, but I'm going to spend my time talking about this thing. I'm not an expert on this, but I'm going to spend my time talking about this thing. It's a weird move, yeah?
No.
You don't think?
No, I'm a free American. I can talk about what I like to. So
you want.
what is the point
I've noticed
here?
you can. But
So,
we
what's
all
the
can.
point?
The point is, what are you pushing? What are you watering?
What
Why?
am I pushing?
Yes.
Liberty, free markets, peace, prosperity, not getting in another stupid catastrophic war, which we're on the precipice of right now. That's what I'm pushing.
What are we on the precipice of?
Well, I think weren't you just talking about it the other day? Everyone I hear on the inside says we're about to attack Iran. I think you just said something about that the other day. Am I wrong about that? I thought I saw in one of your interviews that you did.
Possibly.
No. Okay.
That doesn't mean we are on the verge of a war. I mean, you keep referring to we being in wars. There's a very big difference between a country having a military that's engaged and a country being at war. This country has not been at war for 25 years. You have not been fighting for the American homeland for 25 years.
Yes, we haven't. That's true.
Right.
We haven't had a war
Right.
on our shores. We've been picking on third world countries halfway around the world.
Well, you haven't been randomly picking on them. I mean, Afghanistan, you went...
I didn't say it was random.
Yeah, right, okay. It wasn't like you suddenly decided to bomb, again, Myanmar or something. You went to Afghanistan to find bin Laden and take revenge for 9/11 and stop an attack like that happening again on the American homeland. That is very different from a country being at war.
Yeah,
So
but that's a total mischaracterization of the war in Afghanistan. It's one thing to say that might be an accurate characterization of the special operations mission in late 2001, but then we fought a 20-year regime change war against the Taliban.
Because you got dragged into the quicksand of war.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, fine. But
Fine.
I thought it wasn't a war. Like, what? I don't get
No,
your
I said
argument.
it was a war. It's your use of we, as if you're personally like suffering this war. I mean,
Yeah,
you're a
yes,
taxpayer.
when I say we,
we're
it
taxpayers,
implied,
so we
okay.
pay for it. Okay, fine.
Douglas, would
But,
you go,
I mean,
if I went back and corrected you on every time you've used the term we to refer to your government or something like that? Like if I were to say, oh, we just
it's fine,
imposed tariffs on China,
it's
would you point out that
take
I didn't and it was the
take
Trump administration?
I'm saying you take it obviously very personally, and that's your right to do so, of course. I'm just trying to make sure we're accurate here.
What do you think I'm taking personally?
Just that, the American wars.
Sure, yeah. I think they've killed hundreds of thousands of people and cost my country $8 trillion and degraded my country very much.
And there's a very good argument to make on that. I'm still slightly bemused about this move from I'm an expert on this and I have views to I'm a comedian.
I've never claimed to be an expert on anything.
This is the problem, Joe. I mean, if somebody
Wait a minute,
says
you have to claim to be an expert on something to have an opinion on something?
you don't have to be. You don't have to be. But
So what's
this is
the
like
issue?
I'm not a historian, but I'm pumping out history.
But wait a minute,
I'm
what
not
about
an expert,
just-
but I'm talking all the time about
But
this
you're not
thing.
even talking about specifically on what he just said.
No, I'm saying this is my point about this. You say I'm not an expert.
So what's the solution? To not talk about it?
No, it's to have more experts around.
No, the expert
To
class
hear-
hasn't done a great job.
I know,
man. This is follow the science.
absolutely,
Yeah, but you know what?
absolutely, I
Okay, so
agree
fine.
with
So
that.
during,
I just said to you, I agree with
right,
that.
I know.
But
So
one of the
Douglas,
problems
during
is-
all of COVID,
Fire away.
I will put my track record against any of the expert class on COVID. I'm glad to do that. So should I have just shut up? Should I have shut up by opposing lockdowns and opposing vaccine mandates
No.
and
Well,
talking
that
about
was
the
the
lab leak
argument at the
theory?
time. You realize
That's
that,
the
right?
entire argument that you're making. Let the
No,
experts
I'm
handle
not.
this.
All right. So there was a lot going on there. And I've only shown a snippet of the long form conversation that was had. I would love to have somebody who is going to argue Dave's side and also somebody who's going to argue Douglas's side. And I don't mind which point you want to present or argue for. I say that on purpose because there's a lot to be plucked from this particular exchange. Me myself, I kind of see where both of them can be right and where both of them can be wrong. So those in the chat, right? Please, if someone could come and give an argument for Fantastic Demi's here, and can somebody come and give an argument for Dave, right? And yes, you may state your overall opinion before you kind of hammer down into the fine points you want to pluck from this, extract from this, because that in itself is important. And I only said that because I think last week Maggie had asked us to get somebody who is actually living the life in which it is that we are talking about or talking for on the pod, so that they can basically talk about their experience as opposed to us just, sharing our opinion. And I don't know why I said in that tone. I don't mean it, but I find it very interesting when this particular thought is shared. Experts, please. Experts. If you're not an
Morning,
expert,
Brent.
don't talk on it. Good morning, Demi.
I'm an expert ready to give you some expert information.
Come on.
I'm just, can you hear me right?
I can. Now, the reason as to why is I'm choosing this today because I don't know if Emmanuel would have ever. Ooh. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. I was thinking the audio was a bit messed up. I wasn't sure if it was me or if it was you.
I don't know if it is that Emmanuel would have chosen this particular topic. I know that you had shared this video in the Discord, and I kind of saw it as a sly call out to Emmanuel, and I thought that you kind of
I
drew
saw it
him
as a call
in.
out to you, brother. I saw it as a call out
You kind of drew him in with a Terrence thingamajiggy, but I guess it was all on me, right? So I would love to just have this back and forth with you. I'm not sure if it is that you thought that I would fully be on Dave's side on this particular argument, but I do want to open it up to the broader conversation. So first of all, what do you think about this particular clip? Just a clip. If you're just seeing the clip.
Just seeing the clip with no context whatsoever, obviously it's hard not to agree with Dave. And even in principle, the points that Dave is making about Palestine and so on, I generally agree with. So my gripe isn't with Dave or his points or whatever, but there's a very specific point that I picked out that Douglas Murray making, which I'm in support of. So I think, because I was already having this back and forth with Black Rob in the chat a little bit, because Black Rob said the exact phrase, you don't need to be an opinion to be an expert to have an opinion, and that's not the point I'm arguing or that Douglas Murray is making.
All right, let me just try and put your volume up because you're kind of cutting.
Is it? I'm kind of 1 second. Let me try and find my headphones.
Thank you. Whilst you're finding that, Cam, just from the clip, what are your thoughts?
Just from the clip specifically, without any context, I could understand both sides of what they're saying. Although I disagree with what's his name, Douglas Murray, but but if we're just talking about this clip specifically, obviously yes, it's a sense where experts are needed on certain topics because that just means anyone could say anything without having knowledge. But to say we should not speak on the issue because we're not experts, it's just wrong to me. That was my understanding of what he's basically saying.
So just based on the clip, Demi, Cam has basically said that. Sorry, you're wrong. Dave is right on this one.
Yeah. No, the thing is, I get where you might see that in the short clip because I also held that opinion when I just watched the clip, which then prompted me to watch the full discussion. And in the full discussion, essentially my point can be broken down to this issue, right? It's not that non-experts can't have an opinion because, for instance, you have a show where people who are non-experts talk about different topics all the time. We do it within our families, within our friends. That's not an issue. But the issue is non-experts presenting themselves as authorities on subjects. That's where the issue lies, because I can have an opinion on anything. For example, I gave you that analogy with where I was talking about you and Eman talking about the subject of Arsenal or football, right? I know that obviously you watch football quite a lot and you understand Arsenal as a team, as a specific subject, a lot more in more detail than Eman does. Just from being a football fan, I can listen to the both of you and it's immediately obvious that you know a lot more detail about this particular subject. Now, that's not to say Eman can't still give an opinion, but realistically, in any plane of discussion, of course, I'm going to rate your opinion on Arsenal far more than I'm going to rate Eman's. because in that situation, you clearly have more knowledge, and it's already demonstrated by your credentials of watching every game, having more analysis, kind of looking into more detail. And it's just degrees of stuff. For example, if they then put you up against Mikel Arteta, who's actually the manager of Arsenal, who's been a professional footballer, who's done the work, and this is what I kept saying in the Discord, the people that have either done the academic qualification or done the professional work in that subject, those are the experts. So if they put you, who I still admit that you have some expertise on the subject of Arsenal, against a Mikel Arteta who's worked in Arsenal, who's played professional football, of course your opinion is not as valid as his. Like, it shouldn't be. Like, you would be laughed out of a room if you would make that suggestion. But somehow on different topics, on even arguably more important topics, that's what the wider context is doing. Like, oh, anybody can have an opinion. Like, if we sat on a podcast and then you're saying things about Arsenal Football Club versus on the other side is Mikel Arteta saying stuff about Arsenal Football Club, of course people are going to laugh at you and not take anything you're saying seriously, and rightfully so, because you're just talking on a different plane. You have no idea some of the context that he has, the information that he has, the level of knowledge that he has in that specific subject. And of course that's the case, but you'd still have more expertise than E-Man because you watch more football, but it's just degrees to me.
Beautiful. On that same analogy example, does it matter that I've watched more games than Emmanuel if the question is what could the question be? Ooh. How much profit has Arsenal made over the last 5 years?
Does it matter? So this, and again, you see why this is where the whole non-experts thing then becomes problematic as well. Because like I said, I believe that we should have an opinion. But you see where I brought in Mikel Arteta, who's an actual expert. I'm still not referring to you as an expert. I'm just saying that there are different degrees of knowledge. Just like Dave is clearly not an expert, but obviously he has more knowledge than the average person, as shown by this clip. But he's not an expert. So this is the point I'm trying to draw at, which is that I wouldn't even then go to you. So on that question you've asked, I still wouldn't trust your opinion. Whereas Mikel Arteta, I would be more inclined to definitely trust his opinion because he is an actual expert in this topic.
No, just with myself and Emmanuel.
No, I know, but but you see the point I'm trying to draw, which is that both you and Emmanuel are not experts.
So, right.
Still.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that you just have a little bit more information than Emmanuel, which I can understand that, for instance, a Dave has more information than the average person, but that still doesn't qualify Dave Smith as an expert on this topic, whereas Mikel Arteta on this topic is clearly an expert.
Yes, for that same question, Arteta may not even know that, mind you.
He may not. However, if we're sat on and I'm being asked, just based on what you both have to say and your credentials, 1,000 times over, I'm going to listen to what Mikel Arteta says, and nobody can disagree with that.
All right. So based on that question, you would still look to say, nope, let's go to Arteta for that one.
Compared to Arteta versus you, Arteta, who spent his life as a football player and worked at Arsenal Football Club and played there and been the manager for almost 10, played and managed for almost 10 years in total. I think he would certainly have more credentials to speak on it.
And that is based on your perception, right? Your analysis of the options presented to you. You would go there without knowing whether it is that he knows the answer or not, right?
So what I would do is, based on his background and the fact that he literally works in the club, I think I would be more inclined to choose that option. Yes, I agree. So it's not like a blind faith. It's like, for instance, if somebody asked me a question about TDA, would I go to you or would I go to somebody who watched one show? Of course, I'd go to you.
Yeah, no, I fully understand what you're saying. Fully. Yeah. Like when I'm going to the hospital and there is a door that says Dr. Ron on there, I'm going in there expecting to find Dr. Ron. Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to expect for him to be giving me the information, the answers to the questions I give to him, right? Only because he's in a hospital, he's in that room that has his name on the door, right?
Yeah.
Deductive reasoning, right? That's I fully understand that.
And just to make another, because obviously the problem with this kind of argument I'm making is people always take a binary option, never take new ones. So I'm already seeing people in their minds going, oh, but experts are wrong sometimes. Yes, I know experts are wrong sometimes, but even if we take a likelihood of who's more likely to be wrong generally, an expert or a non-expert, it's still going to be, a non-expert is going to be more wrong than an expert is going to be wrong in general as well. Not to say that an expert isn't wrong. An expert will be wrong on many occasions as well. I'm just saying, nothing is black and white.
Yeah, I love
nothing in this world is black and white.
I love this. Good morning, Black Rob.
Morning.
Do you agree with the spirit of what Demi is saying? Right? I know.
Absolutely
Did you say absolutely?
not.
All right, talk to me. Why not?
Because I think there's two buckets that a lot of times people are in. There's people that implicitly take some expert's opinion as gospel, and there's people that accept that expert's opinion is probably more highly weighted than others, but then they will take the opinions of others as well at face value and then do their own research and then come to their own conclusions. And Sorry, Black Rob. you can always tell who falls into what group by the decisions they make on big issues.
Sorry, can I just cut in really quickly?
Before you continue, Demi, Black Rob, are you fine with having this form of debate where it is that he can cut you?
Yeah.
And all right,
Go
cool.
for it.
You can run it.
I'm not going to cut him the whole time.
No.
I'm
not saying it's bad. I just want to know if he's okay with that. Yeah.
Go for it.
All right.
Okay, cool. I'm not going to cut you the whole time. I just wanted to just on that point you said about people that take experts' opinion in the whole characterization I've just done when I talked about nuance, when I talked about experts not being right all the time, when I talked about varying degrees between Brent, E-Man, Arteta. Based on everything in that, how do you draw a conclusion that I'm taking expert opinion as just blind faith?
Did I say what box you fell in?
You didn't. I'm just curious as to why that is even an option, because I don't understand why that's an option.
Why? What's an option?
The blind faith thing.
No, because it's clearly you see it in society. There's a subset of society that goes, especially, and do you know what it is as well? The younger generations are becoming more and more cynical to mainstream media, mainstream assertions and things. So our parents and the older generations, they're like, well, the TV said this, so therefore it's true. And you see more cynicism growing in younger generations, which is why you have the people like Dave Smith's coming, where they don't have the academic credentials, but they seem to be more what do you call it? I won't say they seem to be more intellectually honest. And I think intellectual honesty supersedes academic prowess. Because Douglas Murray, he has all the credentials. He's got the good voice. He went to Eton. He went to the right schools. He got the right degrees, and he talks with a great voice. So he's the quintessential expert, where he looks the part, sounds the part, looks like he knows what he's talking about. Probably does a TED talk, has all the credentials. So you should believe what he's saying. But then the other guy that's wearing a hoodie doesn't have the credentials, but there's a little bit more integrity in what he's saying.
Just two things though, Black Rob. So first thing, obviously, I feel like you're going to keep going to this blind faith thing, and I am not in any position arguing from that perspective. So I feel like the problem is I'm going to keep saying things, and then you're going to keep arguing a different point. Do you get, like, it doesn't help? Like it's not. I feel like it doesn't help the conversation. I know what the point you're making, but then the problem is people. If you keep doing that, people will think that's the point I'm making, 100%. Which I think me and you know that's not the point I'm making. So if we keep doing that, it's not going to be it's not going to help.
Please be intellectually honest, Black Rob, is what he said.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
I'm not even throwing jabs at you, but
I did that. It's okay. That's free.
Thank you. Because I feel like this conversation is hard to have already, and every time I kept
go on
in Discord, I kept saying I literally everything Douglas Murray says I disagree with. I think he's a racist. I've known about Douglas Murray for 10 plus years. I remember watching the big questions, all different debates that he does. But I understand this very specific point he's making. I get it. And again, just to characterize this point a bit further, I get what you were saying, Black Rob, about young people having cynicism and all that, but I think there's a certain thing about anti-intellectualism and the rise of the ego in the age of internet and access to information. And I think that's where this thing is coming from, personally. I think it's a certain level of ego that tells you that despite someone dedicating their life to this specific subject, studying, whether it's professional, because I'm not saying it's just academic prowess. Somebody that's been a journalist, that didn't go to university, but has been a journalist for 15, 20 years and has practical experience in that field, if it's geopolitics, if it's health, if it's whatever, categorically has more information than me. They might not have gone to university, but they've spent 15, 20 years studying the subject, meeting people, talking to people, interviews, blah, blah, blah. So it's not for me, it's not just about academics. It's just about being versed in that specific subject.
I would argue that's not fair to say this ego, because I'd say that it's more about the democratization of information now. There was a time where we didn't have a choice. Whatever was on the TV, whatever was in the newspapers, whatever was, I don't even fault our parents and their parents' generations for drinking the Kool-Aid, because there was 5 TV channels, there was certain newspapers, they were told what to think.
and there's only a few avenues to really get information from. So it's easier to funnel whatever propaganda you want. But now we're in an age where someone that claims to be a scholar or someone that has all the degrees and you would normally trust yesteryear with the information they're going, okay, cool. They told me this. Let me look at alternative views. Like I keep going back to COVID. Do you know why I go back to COVID? Because like while the most of the doctors are saying, get the jab, there was still a subset of doctors. So they have. I use doctors because to give it expertise credential. There was a subset of doctors that were saying, nah, you can do other means. You don't need to take the jab. And they were, what happened to them? They were shunned. A lot of them lost their jobs. A lot of them were silenced. So if it's about credentials, there was still a subset of people in that situation that had the credentials. If you don't want to listen to like the tinfoil hat people that were saying the same thing, but they were getting shut down. So what happens then when you have two people that have the same credentials saying opposite thing?
So I'll give you a really good thing about that, right? So generally in this topic of, I'll deal with both of those points. So the first one about democratization of information, I agree. More information is available to us on Google, on ChatGPT, and so on and so forth. And I think there was a conversation that Brent and Eman had actually on the show not too long ago that demonstrated that just because information is available doesn't mean information is available, right? So I remember Brent and Eman having a conversation about, in science, a theory is a fact. A theory isn't a fact. What does this mean? What does that mean? So while they had plenty of access to the information that they're talking about, they both arrived at different conclusions, reading the exact same thing. Eman came away from that discussion saying, yes, a theory is a fact. Brent came away from that conversation saying, no, a theory isn't a fact. And they kind of argued around that topic because I believe they didn't have enough expertise in that field, both of them, to interpret what they were actually trying to get at. I think they were both right in their own ways, funny enough, about that conversation. But this shows you the problem with non-experts, even having access to information, but still not necessarily being able to interpret the information they have access to. There's a difference between, for example, I studied law. That's my academic background, right? Yep. There are certain words in legal context that mean completely different thing in normal parlance. You wouldn't know that. If you were just a person saying, oh, you know, I've got democratized information, I can read this contract and tell you, oh, blah, blah, it's fine. No, it's not fine because you don't know exactly what some of these words mean. Consideration in a normal context means something. Consideration in a legal context means something else. So just because information is available doesn't mean it's available. So whether it's the language of science, it's the language of law, it's the language of whatever topic. So that's the first point I'll make to say.
Okay, I'll give you a counter to that.
That's why I didn't. So just let me just finish out this thought really quickly. So that's why I feel like it's ego, because for you to think, oh, me, for instance, somebody spent 10 years, 15 years, whatever, working in this field, studying, learning, up in their craft, and then you, in like a few months or a few days, reading something on Google, think you're gonna somehow have a equally valid opinion, is genuinely egotistical and a little bit insane. Like if we did it on a very like non-consequential topic like football, you can easily see if I'm having a conversation with Alex Ferguson, for instance, I'm a Man United fan. I've watched Man United for 20 years or whatever of my life. I know ins and outs. I know everything. I watch documentaries, read books, but I can't sit there and say my opinion is equally as valid as Alex Ferguson on Man United, because that would obviously, in normal context, that would look insane to most people, because obviously we're not arguing from the same plane. But for some reason, on topics of maths, science, health, that's when we want to take this. Yes, opinions are equally valid. They're not. Let's just get over it.
So my counter to that is that you said law and you said football. You gave them two as examples. The example for the law one that you said initially, it's under the premise that because let's say there's a court case about something, I'm not going to necessarily read the court or the full court documents myself as someone that's not practicing law. But there's like, I know you can say that, let's say there's a YouTube channel where there's a retired lawyer that will go through it, but because they have not got stakes in it, they can honestly speak about it without being. Do you know, like, how do I put it?
But Black Rob, why do you think that these opposing views are free of bias? That's where I keep getting stuck. You always seem to place bias on the experts, but all these opposing views, you see, honest,
not necessarily free of bias, but let's put it this way. Let's put it this way.
That's what I'm saying. Why is it these? Why?
Okay, let me read. So how about the opposing views? You get to see both sides. Let's put it that way. You get to see, maybe it's not free of bias, but at least you get to see the opposite sides of the argument. Let's put it that way. Maybe it's not free of bias. I'll take that back. Yeah. So, but like, let's say like, and go back to your football example. Do you know, like, when you have people that are like employed by Sky or whatever, there's certain things they will and won't say because they're part of the establishment. But then let's say you got like an ex-footballer that had like a YouTube channel or they had their own podcast or something and they're freeing up the information. You see it with basketball podcasts a lot, actually. Yeah. You get like ex-players that are freeing up information and just talking quite brazenly, not because they never had these opinions before, it's because they're not beholden to the establishment that they're in, so they don't have to mince their words. So that's what I'm saying.
I can see where that comes from. But again, I would ask you, what's the agenda of that? Because everybody has so just like the footballer that's still in this establishment has an agenda in terms of protecting what the establishment wants. The footballer that's out of the establishment, for instance, let's take a very good example of a real footballer doing this. Joey Barton. We know Joey Barton clearly has his own agenda. No, but I'm saying
you're doing the same thing that you argued with me. Why are you using that example? That guy. Let's use Jeff Teague.
But I'm saying in the sense of like I don't know who the person you just mentioned, the second person you just mentioned, but I'm just saying Joe Barton because you talk about football and he's like literally an example.
He's a bad example for many reasons. But
clearly outside of the like football mainstream now. Yeah. But obviously he has his agenda. Okay, let's not use Joe Barton. Let's use Matt Letizia, another one that's been kicked out of the football mainstream for certain opinions that don't align with obviously modern day thinking, right? The point is these people also have their own agendas to push certain things that may be unsavory, but because again, it's boosting their popularity and gaining
You're doing what you accuse me of.
No, but I'm generally trying to think of like football. But the reason that they're usually into football, but the reason they're usually out of the fold, is because they have unsavory opinions. So I can't think of.
Is that the reason?
No, but I can't think of many footballers.
Okay, yeah. I'm not really that
are pushing.
Yeah, basketball player. This guy called Jeff Teague. He was like a mid-tier basketball player. He wasn't bad. He was just mid-tier player. But when he started his own podcast, and now he's just free. He just talks quite recklessly. It's quite funny. It's like a bit like Joe Budden podcast, but for basketball. And what I'm talking about is the example I'm giving is that when someone has the expertise of being in the establishment, but is outside the establishment, they can talk more freely, and maybe they'll say things that maybe people in the establishment know and believe to be true or whatever, but they can't say it because there's almost like a wall of silence within establishments where they can do and say what they want once they're not in it.
Yeah.
So there's expertise. That's one thing, but then there's also intellectual honesty, and a lot of times you can't find sometimes intellectual honesty by some of the experts that are still within the establishment because there's rules that they need to abide by.
And I completely agree with this point that you're making, Black Rob. But if you notice, the point of this conversation when we started was about experts and non-experts. The person that you've just mentioned, the Jeff Teague in this situation, is still an expert because he's worked in football. He has in basketball. He has the prior knowledge and expertise. This conversation was about Dave Smith and Douglas Murray, an expert versus a non-expert in the field. So you're
okay. Well, let's go back to that then.
Yeah, so that's what. So
you call Douglas Murray an expert in the field?
In geopolitics, I would say he's closer to an expert.
Do you know his degree he has in it?
So I think he has a degree in politics, and he's worked
a degree in English.
No, he's got a degree in politics.
Not a master's.
You can search it on.
Let me do the Google
on his Wikipedia. People have said that on Twitter. No, people have said that on Twitter, but when you actually check his profile, he's got a degree in politics. So I know people have said that he's got a degree in English on Twitter. I've seen it. And also in terms of his and the thing is, I'm not even just talking about his degree, because degree is such a long time ago. He's a very old guy. So it's more about his actual practice. So when I said someone cannot have a degree, and still have practical experience in the field, this is what I mean. He's been a journalist for like 20 years plus. I remember seeing him on so many debate shows, been a cultural commentator, like properly moderated debate shows. We're talking about he's written for The Spectator, different magazines, different newspapers, like that's what he's done interviews with like reputable world leaders and so on. So when I'm talking about expertise, that's what I mean. I'm not just talking about he got even if he did get a degree in English, it's really not that relevant. I'm talking about he's literally worked in the field of geopolitics. He's had think tanks. Like I disagree with every opinion that he has. He's racist to me.
You watched the whole episode, right?
More or less.
Yeah, so I watched it as well. That whole episode was a argument from my point of view, because Douglas Murray is the expert. Dave Smith isn't. Dave Smith came with stats. He came with talking points. Douglas Murray was just strawmanning him. And I was like, Douglas is supposed to be the expert. Yeah, he looked like he was. So as far as I'm concerned, I think he's on the APAC payroll because he's too intelligent and too well of a. I've seen him in debates. He's a good debater, but because when you debate a point that you know that you don't
believe in, when you debate a point that and has little merit, like it's hard to.
So argue, then it kind of speaks to what I'm saying, where he's got the credentials, the expertise, but he's intellectually dishonest because he's got puppeteers. And when someone is an expert but they're being puppeteered and they're intellectually dishonest, who should I sit them next to someone that is not as expert, that has no expertise in it, but is intellectually honest? Who should I gravitate towards? Should I go, but he's got the MSc, BSc, whatever next to his name, so I'm going to go to him. That's what a lot.
Again, Black Rob, This, you see, I don't know if you saw the back and forth me and Brent had on Discord. But this is what I kept saying. Even when I started my statement, I say I vehemently disagree with everything Douglas Murray has to say. I believe he's a racist. I've been familiar with his work for years. So again, this is my argument. Isn't that let's blindly agree with experts. My argument is that experts' opinions are weighted more than non-experts, and they just by design have more context about a situation or a subject than a non-expert. That's a fact.
Okay,
Before you continue,
in a
Black Rob,
vacuum is
before
correct.
you respond, I've just had a check to see if Douglas Murray has a degree in politics or geopolitics or whatnot, and he doesn't.
Okay.
It says on his Wikipedia it does.
I've just also checked there. It doesn't say that.
What does it say?
It doesn't say that.
No, I'm saying what does it?
That he has a degree in English. That he's
It says
spent a lot of
politics.
Go on.
It looks like it says I'm just googling it now. It says like PPE or something he studied
Where?
on his Wikipedia. Or am I missing this?
What is
It's become
PPU?
so glaringly obvious these days who in the establishment is being puppeteered just by the fact that you see people, you see politicians, you
Oh,
see.
you know what? Sorry, Brent, that's my mistake. It says subject, like he's subject. Sorry, I thought that was his degree subject. It just says subject.
No, but the reason why I say that, Demi, is because I kind of hold the view that you can read yourself, right? The same structured.
I agree. I totally agree.
And I wouldn't not call him an expert because he doesn't have a degree in a particular subject. I would call
The
him an
same
expert
point I
if it
made.
is.
Huh? I said same point I made already. I said it doesn't need to be a degree. I said it can be practical experience in the field. Footballers don't have degrees, but they know more about football.
Yeah, but what you said was that he does
Exactly
have a
what I'm
degree.
saying.
Do you understand? So I'm like, let's remove that need for the degree. Let's not base this particular conversation on whether the person holds a degree in something because it doesn't for you.
But you see, Brent,
go on.
I already made this point. I already said I believe it's about practical experience. Like I've said this
No,
many
I
times.
hear that,
now,
but you
like
just said
5, 6
in
times.
rebuttal to what he was saying that he does have a degree in it.
No, because I believe he does. But I did say, even when I said, even if he has a degree, it's still irrelevant because of the 20 years of experience of him being a journalist.
No, but it's important not to just glance over that was wrong, though.
Okay, sure.
And also, Demi, I want to give you an example. So, for example, the medical industry, right? You know, if you look back into
You really want to drag me into this vaccine debate?
No, this is not even about that. It's not about vaccine. It's not about vaccine. But if you look back into the history of the medical industry, the Rockefeller family had pumped a lot of money into medical schools across America, and they basically subsidized the medical industry so that they could influence how it was shaped, how the education of it was shaped. And there was not an emphasis on pharmaceutical-centered medicine until the Rockefeller family got involved, and that shaped how medicine was being taught to the next generation of medics. So over certain amount of generations, what the medical students have been taught has been directly influenced by stakeholders within the pharmaceutical industry. So it's not necessarily that the experts are malicious in nature because everyone goes into their profession. But what if the things that you've been taught from the onset has already had an influence from generations back? So therefore, you're naturally skewed towards one way where there's other ways that you can look at something, but you've never been taught that side. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. But then I think you also, because again, when I started this conversation, I said it takes nuance to have this conversation, right? I think you can't have a black and white. Like I've said many times, there's a lot of things that say I wouldn't agree with an expert on. I don't think an expert is the only person allowed to have an opinion. But the problem is the rebuttals to my arguments will always be this. Well, what if the experts are corrupted? And I agree. We live in a corrupted world already, though. So within this corrupt,
you've seen it in real time. You've seen it in real time. People used to speculate on it, but now people are actually seeing it in real time.
Sorry, say that again.
People used to speculate about, but what if they're being corrupted? But now, as I said, the democratization of information means that you can see the corruption in real time and call it out.
There's corruption on both sides, by the way. There's corruption on both sides.
Yeah, and I think that's where it keeps getting muddled because I feel like there always seems to be this. So, and this is the exact point that I think Douglas Murray was making again, and I'll try and make it again, maybe in a different way. But the point is, we will hold the experts to these standards and say, we're finding you out, we're finding your bias, we're finding this, we're finding that. But then the same level of intellectual rigor and the same level of criticism and the same level of scrutiny doesn't get placed on these non-experts. And the thing is, just to add to that as well, that's why whether it's true or not, I'm just making the point I think Douglas Murray was making and I'm making, which is that a Dave Smith can then make these points, and if he is wrong, it's cool. He's not an expert. He's not saying he is. Cool. So whatever, I can just, and that's why he kept saying it's like this jelly thing. Like, it's like, okay, I can say these things, and then if I'm wrong, or if blah blah, or if I have it doesn't matter if you have a bias, because, well, I'm not an expert anyway. So it's like you get to have all your cake and eat it. But then people like the Black Probs of this world will take you as being more intellectually honest than as.
But isn't that intellectual honesty though? If someone says 10 things and then you find out 2 of them are wrong, and then you go you go to that person and say those 2 were wrong, they'll be like, right, you're right, okay, cool. Scrap that. Isn't that intellectual honesty?
No, because that's not what.
It's course correcting when new information comes.
Because that's not what they're doing though. What they're doing is they're just saying, so throughout this whole conversation, they'll just say, well, I'm not an expert. So they're allowed to give any information they want, because the rebuttal isn't, oh, I've changed my mind and I've presented with new information. The rebuttal is, I'm not an expert. Therefore, in this convenient situation, my opinion can be disregarded. But then in this convenient conversation, when I'm telling you things from an authority perspective, because I have the information, yes, you can listen to me. But then as soon as I'm found out to be wrong, oh, jelly, I'm not an expert. You can't have it both ways.
I prefer that person. The person that said, because as I said, if you present me with some information that destroys one of my points, I'll be like, right, okay, cool. I might be wrong on that one. But the person that has been commandeered, like Douglas Murray, it's either been blackmailed or being paid. Even if you present him with information that destroys his argument, because he's got masters that are being puppeteered, he'll be like, I do not care. This is what I think, because they're zealot. So that's intellectual dishonesty, being presented with new information, not changing your course correcting.
I think we're slightly arguing different things here. So I'm not saying that somebody who accepts new information and changes their mind is that. So the people that Douglas Murray is addressing here, they're not seeing new information and changing their mind, because this is the thing. They've already decided to go against the consensus or the grain of whatever the subject is. So whatever the subject is, they've already seen the information which is accepted and said this is wrong. So they're already taking a position of, I don't agree with the mainstream. So you could argue that maybe the mainstream's right, maybe the mainstream's wrong, but that's seen as the accepted consensus opinion. So if they're seeing that information and choosing to go against it, they've already made a stance, which is this information is wrong, therefore I am right. So regardless of any information that the mainstream gives them, that information is wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's an assumption you're making now, right?
All right, pause. I'm not making an assumption.
That's the position of a conspiracy theory.
Fellas, pause, please. Thank you very much. Good morning, Emmanuel, and good morning, Joshua. Oh, Emmanuel just left. Crap. All right. Question Demi. Do you think that Dave was being dishonest or wrong with his position? Or do you think Douglas was not talking to Dave, but more so the general idea that Joe keeps on bringing people on that are just comedians and because they're popular and whatnot, people just listen to them? Or was he directly talking about Dave Smith?
So absolutely, and this is what I said about when I made my comment about you need the full context of a conversation, because this is the thing, I agree with most of what Dave Smith says. I agree, and in that discussion, I think Dave Smith also has a lot of problems with other issues, but in this particular discussion, I think on Palestine, I think he's spot on. But yes, I think Douglas Murray wasn't really talking to Dave Smith. He was more talking about Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan's audience. Joe Rogan has obviously a very specific tilt towards a certain side, and therefore platform certain people unchallenged, allows, because they're because Joe Rogan's reach is so massive, it creates an equalization of some of the less valid opinions from non-experts and puts them on the same weighting or same foot as actual experts. And then when some of these opinions, and then so a good example of this is, for example, you remember the whole Billy Carson Wes Huff situation, right?
Yes.
Yep. So that's a really good example of when a non-expert is being given a platform to speak unchallenged and kind of say a lot of untruths, for instance, about Christianity or about different religions. When they do that unchallenged to a big platform, it almost feels like the information they're giving could be accurate because there's not much challenge and it's seen as equally valid as the experts on the other side. But the minute they're met with an expert like a Wes Huff, who's actually done the archives, done the studying, is a PhD holder, has kind of done the work, as I've said, whether practical or academic, it starts to unravel really, really quickly. And I guess we could also say that Wes Huff obviously does have a bias because he is an apologetic. He is a Christian. So again, if we're talking about the establishment and non-establishment, we can argue that Wes Huff has an agenda to protect Christianity. However, that's still in that debate doesn't let us negate the fact that he is correct in a lot of things that he's saying.
But
general.
Joshua,
you're making an argument for me. Do you know why?
Before you respond to that, Black Rob, good morning, Joshua. And how do you define an expert?
For me or
no, Joshua.
Oh, no, sorry.
Sorry, I was just put some petrol in the car. I don't know because I don't have any credentials in it. So like when it comes to experts, I just want to be listened to. So I'd probably be on the side of Dave Smith because you need to be reasonable at first, isn't it? Is my opinion. In terms of how we define an expert, I guess everybody has their bias, innit? The problem I have with these types of conversations is that I'm always going to go back to this thing. When you say these people are bought and paid for, who specifically are you saying is doing this? Because it also feels like a bit of a deflection. So we're not having to wrestle with what we're seeing in front of us. We can talk about elements of it that go on in the background. It's like, well, what about the arguments of the people that are laid before us? Obviously, Douglas Murray didn't do himself a service, innit? But
you make no arguments.
He made no. Okay, I need to go and watch it. And like I said, I'm coming from a prior knowledge of this guy and how you would define an expert. But I mean, it's super hard. But you have to listen to people who are reasonable. But I also think the point that come up about people going on Joe Rogan's podcast and who aren't experts, it's a podcast, bro. Like, what does that even mean?
What do you mean?
But it's influential now.
So in the age that we live in, I think that means a lot now.
That's new media.
That is new media. It's taken over the TV.
More information than the news.
This is the new like propaganda tool. This is the new like place where our marketplace of ideas, information exchange. So this is putting somebody on that stage now means a lot. So if
Trump went on a podcast tour. Trump went on a podcast tour.
What about me, sir? What did you say?
I'm just saying, like, what about your own ability to make intellectual decisions about what you're hearing? Because I've seen Joe Rogan, I can just ignore it and get on with my day, innit?
Yeah, sure. No, it's not about me specifically. It's more about the equation. So regardless about the individual, it's about, for instance, let's say we have a scientist saying that black people are intellectually inferior. I'm not saying this is a person that's been gone on Joe Rogan show. I'm just saying, imagine if we was to have such a person on a podcast and equating and basically platforming them and saying this idea is equally valid. So the idea that black people are intellectually or genetically inferior, obviously that's a stupid idea, and we know that's a stupid idea. But these are, in terms of other subjects, these are the kinds of things I feel like sometimes Joe Rogan does platform.
But the thing is,
we're now bleeding into censorship, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Censorship. But I think the information, the whole marketplace.
I don't believe in censorship. I just believe in pushback. I think the issue is also the lack of pushback. So the censorship is one thing. I think, have your opinion, but you see when the Billy Carson and the Wes Huff thing happened, pushback immediately. It's simple. Marketplace of ideas regulates itself. When pushback is allowed, we can all see. So we can all see the truth. So what I'm saying is, pushback is what I want, not censorship. So it's not. That's
exactly what Joe Rogan does. Facilitates.
But he doesn't though, because for instance, the people that Douglas Murray is talking about, the various people that he said they came on unchallenged, presented their wacky Scooby-Doo theories. And without pushback, it legitimizes opinions as just like before Billy Carson received this public pushback. Now that once he's gotten this public pushback, it was easy for people to go, "Oh, this guy's an idiot." But until that public pushback happens, it's
you know what Joe Rogan does a lot of times? He'll get the wackos on, and then what happens is that the audience will be like, "Oh, I know someone that has the complete opposite view. Let's get them on together." And that's what happened with the Wes Huff and Billy Carson. That's what happened with Douglas Murray and Dave. So I think he gets them on individually, but then he does bring them together to battle. And then normally the intellectually honest one wins, because that's what happened with Wes Huff and what's his name, Billy Carson, and that's what happened with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray. So actually, my argument is actually standing where, but in the Wes Huff one, Wes Huff was the expert, but he was also intellectually honest, and he won.
But Black Rob, do you not think?
And with the Douglas Murray one was the expert, but Dave Smith was intellectually honest, and Dave Smith won. So it seems like the intellectually honest person wins, regardless if they're expert or not.
But are you just saying people are intellectually honest because you agree with their point? Is that also what's happening, Black Rob? Because obviously you're a Christian and you agree with the.
It's a good question.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you
somebody
why. I'll
who's
tell
a
you why I said the
non-Christian
intellectual.
might place a lot
I'll
of
tell you why.
so the same way you were able to say, oh, you know, the footballer that's within the industry has a certain context and I can't break out the certain. Wes Huff is a Christian apologist. He's the
Do you want me to
director of
why I
Apologetics
say
Canada. He
intellectually
has a
honest?
massive bias.
Do you want me to tell you why I said he's more intellectually honest? Because
Yes.
whether you agree with, like, even people, whether you're Christian or not, whether you agree with Wes Huff or not, when the light was shone on both of them and they both scrutinized each other. Billy Carson crumbled because he didn't really believe the stuff he was saying.
Bear in mind, just for people listening, Black Rob is talking about the exchange between Wes Huff and Billy Carson on a separate podcast. When Wes Huff went onto the Joe Rogan podcast, he wasn't intellectually honest.
Yeah.
Yes. And he was not challenged at all. So people within that context viewing Billy Carson, they were generally viewing him in the court of public opinion as an expert on the idea of religion, specifically Christianity. All these wacky theories were placed. They were given a certain equivalence that without pushback that wasn't challenged in that. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is just that Billy Carson is a fraud, but platforming him in that way made him feel like not a fraud to the general court of public opinion. And the problem is, obviously, thank God he had that debate with Wes Huff, and obviously everything was kind of leveled out. However, the problem is that doesn't always happen in a lot of cases, and the marketplace of ideas. That the public opinion shifts. People start believing in things. We're talking about this is new media. This is where ideas are formed. So that's why it's important to actually give an expert opinion, regardless. Like people like Billy Carson can't just go around spreading things about Christianity that aren't right. It's just not. It's not correct. That's not how you run a productive society. As platforming those people and giving them equivalence, it's not right, in my opinion.
But if Douglas Murray had got to go on the show by himself without Dave Smith as the expert, then his opinion would have been accepted as more valid than Dave's, even though he's just a propaganda tool for Israel.
But this is the thing, and this is the truth, right? I vehemently disagree with Douglas Murray. But what we have to realize is on the top. So I don't want to say a lot of the stuff that Douglas Murray and Dave got into was more ideas of. There were a lot of ideas of opinion. With Wes Huff and Billy, like these were just straight matters of fact. For instance, when certain books were discovered, this, that, So on matters of opinion, for instance, there are experts on both sides that do agree with both Israel and Palestine. Like there are genuine experts on, like obviously I personally agree with Palestine, but there are experts in the field that do genuinely agree with Israel. So that it's not to say that Douglas Murray. Obviously, I know Douglas Murray is being paid by AIPAC, and I know that he is compromised. But it's not to say that there are not. Because he was dealing more specifically in matters of opinion, like, for instance, and again, when it came to matters of fact, he did correct Dave, for instance, what is a war and what is just military engagement. He's right in the correct definition of, even in that clip that we watched, when you're making specific statements, and this is the thing about being an expert, and again, people miss this because obviously court of public opinion is easy to just sway. When he was making statements about, we've been in wars for X amount of years, as an expert, you would know what an actual war is versus what is just a military engagement on a specific front. Now, I'm not saying that makes any difference, but I'm just saying specific technical terms mean things in specific
but do you know
fields
what
of
people
expertise.
do? When they don't have a strong argument, they cherry pick little words like mistakes you made, like small. Like
but it's not about cherry picking. It's about if I'm having an argument. If I'm having an argument with someone about football and they're telling me offside is one thing and it's not cherry picking for me to explain to them. Look, bro, this is not offside. Like you can generally mean that what this person done was against the rules of football, but it's idiotic to me. Like,
and then
to be having a conversation with you about offside.
All the points that he made. Write down every point. Whether you agree with Dave or not, he was arguing specific. He said, okay, he made specific claims, and then he tried to argue them. Douglas Murray was just playing. He was just playing. What do you call it?
Word.
Yeah, word salad. He was going. He was trying to. He wasn't actually making any actual statements. He was just trying to discredit Dave.
I think, to be fair, the other thing is because. And this is hard for me to argue because I don't actually agree with Douglas Murray's opinion. So I'm finding it difficult to argue that, but I'm arguing that the principle of what he's trying to say. And to be honest, I think because Dave was making a lot of rudimentary mistakes about what he was actually talking about, it's like, I keep going back to the football analogy because most people will understand that quite obviously. Like, it's a very obvious. Like when I'm having a conversation with someone that don't even know what offside is, bro. Like I'm not taking you seriously. Like I'm just like, it might seem like I'm playing word salad or just being silly with you because, bro, like how am I having an in-depth discussion about we should do a 3-4-3 or like this inverted
That's a
A
false
or what?
equivalence. I'd say a better example is like someone like, you know, those people
level.
like
If you
what's it
don't
called,
even know
Expression
offside,
Oozing. Do you know that guy, that Tottenham, that YouTuber guy that
I
loves like
guarantee you
Tottenham?
knows offside.
Huh?
I said I guarantee you knows what offside is.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So someone who understands the topic but hasn't got credentials.
No, but it's not about no. So this is the thing. It's not about. So like I said, it's degrees. So when I talked about Eman, Brent, Mikel Arteta, it's degrees. For instance, somebody like I keep going back to somebody that doesn't know what offside is. Me that I do clearly understand football. And I watch football. Like I try and go to a game every season. Blah blah blah. Like I've watched every Man United game you can think of. I'm not going to bother wasting my time having a debate with someone about football that don't understand offside. Like, regardless of, they might make 1 or 2 good points here and there. Oh, you know, like, Man United are crap at the moment. Like, it doesn't take a football genius to know that Man United generally aren't doing well. You can just
Would you
look at the
equate
table.
Dave Smith
But
to someone that doesn't know, like that, to the guy that doesn't know offside but likes lots to talk about football? Would you equate
no. So in my scale, for instance, where I talked
Okay,
about Brent, Eman, and Mikel Arteta, you see, Brent knows quite a lot about football, but I wouldn't put Brent on the same level as Mikel Arteta. Do you get it? Like, there's degrees.
I would like to recenter this to something more relatable for the audience, right?
Yeah.
My question is because I do feel your passion, Demi, and I do think that it's been building up a little while, right? Has any of the conversations that we've had, right? Let's say COVID, let's say Terrence Howard, irked you a bit because either myself, who isn't an expert in something, is vomiting thoughts and opinions into the matter, where you'd prefer if an expert was in my seat?
In this case, I think it's a bit different because we're all arguing about opinions. So I think it's different. I just think when it's like matters of fact, I suppose, because a lot of this stuff, like when we talk about capitalism, socialism, different things, like I feel like a lot of this stuff we're arguing about opinions. So I don't know if it's as I think the only thing I would just say is when it's matters of actual fact, like for instance, I don't know, the sky is blue or whatever, like as much of even though that's not a fact, that's as much of a fact as we have, right? So I would just like matters of specific facts to just be correct, and then the opinions, everybody have their field day, because a fact can be one thing, but somebody can take it in many different ways.
Also, with the COVID issue, COVID gate, you didn't think that we were presenting the same things that you're seeing in this particular debate?
In some ways, yeah, but largely it's just your opinion. You don't want to take a vaccine that you're not sure about. I think it just boils down to you know, like some people don't want to take it, some people don't want to take it. I think ultimately, and people are going to then confirm like their bias with whatever side. So I'm going to confirm my bias with the side of doing it, and the other people are going to confirm their bias.
Nah, CT, with that one, I said time has proven that the tin foil hat people were right on most of the stuff with COVID. But as I said, your cognitive dissonance won't allow you to admit that you're wrong.
Then this is the problem, though, Blackrock, because you'll say that, and then you'll present opinion or you'll present information that also can go the other way, where I can also present you information that counts.
Okay,
so
I'll give you one fact, and I've told you this before. I'll give you one fact. I'll give you one fact. There was a fact that they said the jab would reduce transmission. Facts. I've still got flipping BBC.
Who's they?
The BBC News guy, also news, the newspapers, and
so is the BBC News guy the same as the research? And is that what the research said?
And Pfizer, I told you, I sent you that video of the Pfizer board, the board member of Pfizer in the EU, being called up for deposition, saying that she admitted that they sold it to the public as it being stopping transmission, but they never tested it for it. So
just be clear exactly the argument you're making, so I can research exactly what you're saying. And I'm happy to.
Senior exec for Pfizer was deposed by the EU, or I don't know if it's deposed, but they went to, you know, when they sit in front of them, and I don't know what the word is, and then they asked her directly, did you say that it would stop transmission? Yes. Did you test to see if it could actually stop transition? No.
Oh, I remember this one. I think the point that
that's the experts. That's your expert.
This is what, you know, when I said about a fact can be a fact and then people take it different ways. I think the point that you were making, and I'll be so real. Again, I did look into this, and I think what you're saying is correct. I just think maybe slightly misleading in how it's presented.
Go for it.
So what I mean by that is I did read into this when you said it, because you mentioned it to me, I think, on Discord or something like that, and I did look into it. And what essentially kind of the overarching message with that was, sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will find it and maybe send it back to you on Discord. I can't remember.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. And Black Rob, thanks for doing that. But I do want Demi to look for that and be able to respond to you.
Maybe I'll just do
you
that
have it
while
right in
we're-
front of
while
you,
we're here.
Black Rob, and he doesn't have it right in front of him, so it's a bit unfair. Question, Demi. Right, I've seen this comment a lot. Terrence Howard, 1 + 1 is 1. Why is Brent arguing this? Question: do you think I'm arguing that 1 + 1 equals 2, or 1 × 1 equals 2?
I definitely don't think you're arguing that. I think what you're arguing for is the right of nut jobs to be platformed equally as. Oh god.
How about you, Black Rob? Where do you think my position is with the Terrence Howard thing?
What do I think your position is?
Yeah.
Bro, I don't know. I think you're open. You're probably even more open-minded than me. So I don't know. With stuff like this, I don't know, man. I think 1 + 1 is 2. Like, I don't know what. But I'm the fool that will hear him out anyway, because I find it interesting.
All right, fair. Kofi, good morning.
Morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning. Why do you think that I think that 1 × 1 equals 2?
Pardon?
Why do you think that I think that 1 × 1 equals 2?
No, I said what? Wasn't it Terrence Howard that tried to say 1 + 1 equals 1? And have you been trying to argue this for quite a while, or have I been mistaken?
Is it 1 + 1 equals 1, or is it 1 × 1 equals 2?
No. I thought it was 1 + 1 equals 1. Or is it 1 × 1 equals 2? Is that what he's trying to say?
I think it's 1 × 1 equals 2.
Regardless, they're both wrong. So why do we keep arguing about this point?
No. Why? My question is, why do you think that I'm arguing for that to be right?
What, 1 × 1 equals 2?
Yeah.
Well, haven't you been arguing for that to be right?
No.
Or have I got that wrong?
No, I haven't.
You haven't?
No, I haven't.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
About Terrence Howard?
Yes, about Terrence Howard.
Have you not been bringing this argument to Iman before?
I've been bringing the conversation about Terrence Howard to the fore, and I keep saying Emmanuel is refusing to listen to anything else he's saying because of that thing that he thinks is wrong. I've never said it's right.
Okay. So the issue is because that Terrence Howard got that information wrong. Iman doesn't want to argue it.
Yes.
Anything.
Yes. So my follow up question, right, is
is me. That's not me.
My follow up question is: everybody knows who Akala is, right?
Everyone knows who what?
Akala.
Yeah, yes.
Do y'all think that he's an expert on Black history, Black British history? Sorry.
On Black British history.
Yes. From what you've seen or perceived, do you think he's expert on Black British history?
I'd say so, more so than most people.
How about you, Black Rob?
Yes.
Joshua?
I would give it to him, but can I quickly say something? Can you hear me well? Yeah.
Before you say something, can I just ask Demi before you say something? Demi?
Yes.
All right.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was, do you think that Akala is an expert on Black British history?
Yeah, I'd probably say so. Yeah, at this point, I think he spent in not long enough.
You done fucked up now.
I think he spent.
All right, Joshua, back to you. What was the point you were trying to make?
Sorry, just a quick one. To respond to that very quick point. My point is not agree with every expert. I literally disagreed with Douglas Murray. I think he's a racist. I'm not. My point isn't. I'm making.
Yeah, we will get to that. And that's the broader conversation here, right? Because Black Rob is seeing it as binary. You are coming across as though you see it as binary based on how Black Rob is talking to you, and you're saying, I don't see it as binary. And that's where we will always keep knocking, right? So back to Joshua. Your point that you were trying to make.
So yeah.
Yeah. Go.
Well, it was gonna be that, because this is where the conversations between sort of laymen and academics gets interesting, isn't it? So in like academics, from my understanding, there's something called a stipulative definition, which is a definition tied to the context of what you're talking about. So I might use a word, but I might be using it differently than the common sort of parlance, isn't it? So like people may not use it in the same way that you're using it. And I think we run into this issue a lot because an academic might be saying something that may be factually true, but because they're and I think Demi kind of made the point of differentiating between what is war and what is an engagement. When we have stipulative definitions that can change depending on who you're talking to, you can run into these issues a lot. And I think that's one of the major places where, let's say, for example, with the Terence Howard thing, if you're doing something like stochastic mathematics, yeah, you might get to 2. Do you know what I mean? It's a different way of engaging with maths, but a guy who does that high level maths might understand that engagement. So what Terence Howard is making sense. So there's people out there that can argue that what he's saying is not ridiculous, even though the majority of us know that whatever way we look at that question, the answer is like in general wrong. So I think that's where it gets complicated, because there are ways you could say that what you're saying makes sense, but in general, that to help us in specifics, it's nonsense.
Demi?
Sorry, can I just quickly respond
Yes,
to
you can.
Black Prob's previous point about the thing? So I remember what this is now. I just had a quick chance to Google it just to find what it is you're talking about. So I believe there was a Dutch member of parliament, Rob Roos, that asked a Pfizer executive if they had tested the vaccine for transmission, and the answer was no. That's what you're referring to, is it, Black Prob?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dutch member of parliament, Rob Roos, who obviously isn't a medical expert. So the answer to that question was, so then Rob Roos then went on his Twitter after this exchange and said, all breaking news, Pfizer director admits that vaccine was never tested on preventive transmission. It was always a lie. The purpose was for the COVID passport to force people to get vaccinated. Now, in the actual fact checking, they've looked through this claim, and while obviously the person, and you appreciate intellectual honesty, right? The person immediately said, because that is the actual honest answer, the executive from the company. The truth is, it was neither expected nor deceptive that Pfizer's initial claim did not assess vaccine's ability to prevent virus transmission. It wasn't supposed to be tested for that. So it was only tested for efficacy in the initial testing, and then the testing for transmission then came through. So as a message from Pfizer, they never gave you the message outwardly about transmission when they tested it originally. They only did that transmission testing after it had been released. So as far as efficacy of the vaccine, that's what was supposed to be tested, and that is what is supposed to be tested in the first phase of testing, according to who's fact-checked this. Obviously, again, they might have their own bias, but that's just what the information according to who's
So basically, what you're trying to say is that they never tested the fact that it reduced transmission prior to launching the product, right?
Yes, so it says here, claims suggesting that Pfizer or government bodies misled the public by not testing transmission are misleading. The design and the scope of clinical trials were publicly available and transparent, with regulatory agencies like the FDA, CDC reviewing the data accordingly. Real world studies are anyway, let me not read that whole bit. But in summary, the point was the early trials were not about testing transmission, they were about testing efficacy, and that's typical, and especially due to the speed they had to. So while you might have issue with while I get that someone might have issue with that line of testing, the point is, you see how something can be a fact and two people interpret it in different ways.
No. It's not being interpreted a different way. We interpret it the same way. They said that there was. They said they never. Sorry, it was never tested from transmission.
But you see, the point you made was that they began by saying they tested for transmission, and later on they said no. You see how those are two different points now, and this is the actual fact. So these are two. So saying you tested it for transmission and then later saying no, we didn't test for transmission is different to not ever saying you tested it for transmission and then still after the fact saying we didn't test it for transmission.
I think you're the misunderstanding. The question, what was asked was that. It was so you're basically saying the same thing I say. They never tested for transmission. Wait. They never tested for transmission upon launching it, but the whole campaign prior to launching was about how it would reduce transmission, and then they retroactively tested for transmission after it was already in the market. While they already had a campaign explaining that it would be a reduced transmission.
So what the fact checkers are saying here, again, the fact checkers may have their own bias. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying what they've looked at. The design and scope of the clinical trials were publicly available and transparent, with regulatory agencies like the FDA and the CDC reviewing and approving the data accordingly. So this was publicly available information that they would not test transmission before they released this. So this was publicly available information that was not suppressed, that they would not test for transmission before they released it. Now, we can have issue with that, but what I'm saying is let's argue the matter of fact, which is, publicly speaking, they weren't testing for transmission, and then after the fact they said they weren't testing for transmission. What the point that you made to me just now on this call to say, oh, they've been found out, they said they tested for transmission, and then later on they said they didn't. Those are two different points. No, that's all I'm saying.
You're wrong.
But the original point you made, Brent, what was the original point that Black Rob made to me on the, like, before this thing about they said they tested for transmission and it would preventing transmission. Now
I agree with Demi on this. Black Rob, you need to do better. You're being intellectually dishonest.
No, I'm not, because what you're saying, I'm telling you, they tested for they claimed that they were testing for transmission. The whole marketing campaign was reduce the curve.
But you keep saying the whole marketing campaign. They've literally said to you it was publicly available information that this was not to be tested for transmission within the research paper, within all the regulatory agencies. That obviously, I know that, again, this is where we have to be nuanced about issues. You keep saying they. Who is they? Like, Pfizer, the research, the governments, they all have different agendas.
Good point.
While I agree with you that.
Good point.
And while I agree with you that for instance, we had the Chris Whitty, that scientific advisor, and we had Boris Johnson. Obviously, a lot of the time, Boris was just saying, like, let's say a politician might just say things that isn't in line with the actual scientific information. That's not uncommon. Politicians have their own. So that's why I'm saying let's nuance. And so when you come to the conclusion and say, oh, well, it's just been proven wrong, they did this or who did that, like, what are we talking about? Like, that's what I'm trying to. That's what
Why in the interview did they ask her? Did you ever test for the transition before launching? And she said no. And they said, did you say it could? I'll find the video. Let me find the video.
Good, thank you.
No, please do, because it says here.
Give him some time, Demi. Give him some time. You counted very well. Give him some time.
I'll give him time.
Whilst we're waiting, I'm going to play this video. Right? It's very, very short, and this speaks to the intellectual dishonesty bit that Black Rob mentioned. Why is this not showing up? Let's see.
Crossing points. I really resent that form of argumentation. When were you last there at all?
Sure.
I really resent it. You should at least do the courtesy of visiting it. This is not an attractive invitation. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something. I have the right to talk about whatever the hell I want, and no one's going to stop me or try to intimidate me. And I think that if I said to somebody else the other way around, it would be equally reprehensible. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there. If I said, shut up, you have no right to criticize anything that Douglas Murray says, because, hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region. Okay, it's not an exact comparison, but seriously, is that a reasonable form of argument? No. In that case, nobody can talk about anything. We might as well pack up, go home and isolate ourselves. If you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, if you've never seen any of this going on. I mean, there are some people who've written about there are people who've written about the Holocaust who didn't experience the Holocaust and have written about it better than people who did. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it. This idea that the lived experience has to triumph over everything else is not always correct. You should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region. So there's an irony to this, but let's skate over the irony.
All right, so you can't really see.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
Harder to. I've watched that video already, but for people in the chat, I think it might be harder to follow that without the video. But I think people get the premise. But I think it's hard to follow without seeing the video. But.
All right, so basically, it's a mashup of Douglas Murray on a previous podcast defending his right to speak on something that he hasn't lived through, and this is in contrast to his position on the Joe Rogan podcast. Right.
Yeah, and I've seen that video actually, and I think it's quite an interesting point about media literacy.
Talk to us. Open it up a bit.
I don't know if you noticed this, right? But the video that for instance, it keeps cutting from one video when he's in the black t-shirt to then his points in the in the interview that we're talking about.
Yes.
Just a little bit of like thinking about it, and maybe just a little bit of critical, analysis on this video. Would you say that the points that he's making in the video where he's wearing the black shirt, do they directly address, or are they just conveniently placed to address the point? So if you actually listen to just the words in the video in the black shirt, what exactly is he talking about? So for instance, at the very beginning, it says that's a line of argument. So it starts off with him talking about the appeal to authority fallacy that he did in his video with Dave Smith, and then it cuts to the next video where he's wearing a black shirt, and it says that's a line of argument that blah blah blah. But in the video where he's wearing a black shirt, what line of argument is he talking about? Do you know that?
No.
But is it just conveniently cut? No. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It is conveniently cut to suit the narrative of the editor.
So what I'm saying is, what he's saying in the video in the black shirt might not necessarily be relating to the actual point
it doesn't.
being made. Obviously, but it just
what I'm saying, it
like
doesn't have to be related to it. His point is in the same way he isn't speaking directly to Dave and making a general point on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's the same way he's defending the ability to speak on something without having that lived experience.
Yeah, no. So that very specific end, that last phrase, yes, I agree.
But he
and
also mentioned the Holocaust, writing on the Holocaust, right?
Yeah. No. Even again, I agree. But again, if you remember, and this is the thing where we have to really, really use nuance and really dig into the issue. If you remember on that what do you call it? That thing with Dave Smith. Dave Smith said to him, "Oh well, can you write about the Nazis whenever in the 1930s?" And he specifically said, "I'm not talking about time travel, but you can actually travel." So again, those are two different points. Talking about the Holocaust, which was in the past, like 80 years ago, whatever, is different to something that's happening right now. Obviously, I don't agree necessarily you have to travel to Gaza to know about it, but I'm just saying, again, it's not. Just because a video is presented in a certain way doesn't mean it means what you think it means, is what I'm saying. So the black shirt arguments, the black shirt arguments aren't necessarily directly in opposition to the arguments on the Dave Smith argument.
Sorry, do you agree in principle that you don't have to live through an experience in order to speak on it?
Oh yeah, 100%, totally.
And do you also believe that you can write more cogently on a particular event in history than somebody who has lived through that particular event and written about it?
Yeah, no, I don't think
so both the points that he has made in a particular clip you also agree with. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, I'm saying that those points where he's wearing a black shirt don't contravene the points he's making in the Dave Smith. And I think the video is presented as if it's like a direct opposition. And that's what I'm
think in the actual Dave Smith exchange, Joe Rogan asking the question, do you need to be an expert on something to talk about it, literally is in parallel to what he was just contrasting himself with that edit. I don't have to basically play that video in that same exchange. I watched the entire thing. In that same exchange. Go on.
No, I agree with you, and I think even Douglas Murray would agree with you. And I can't believe you've actually got me on a podcast arguing in favor of Douglas Murray, which is crazy.
No, I understand what you're arguing in favor of, and I do believe it's important what you're arguing. I 100% believe, but it's important
just to make it absolutely
when you see
clear,
experts having taken their time, sacrificed years, right? In order to basically learn a particular discipline, 100% they should be given that particular respect to listen to them, right? Not to just follow, because you still need to do your weighing. Because within that particular field, you have different people who have different opinions on what the issue is.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So there's always a weighing that needs to be done.
But then how much more so do you need to do that for non-experts?
100%. Dependent on the topic at hand, because I mentioned Akala, and Akala he reads a lot, right? So he takes in a lot of data. So he's able to regurgitate that at will. That's why some people call him an expert, because he's well read. Emmanuel is not an expert in some people's eyes because he doesn't have accreditation, but he reads a lot and he presents his information cogently.
Yeah, right? Then he said that Akala was an expert, but then he said, so what makes Akala expert?
it's just the thing about degrees, isn't it? So like I said, obviously with again, going back to the football thing, just to make it really clear. Football, Arsenal, maybe Eman, then Brent, then Mikel Arteta, degrees. So it's just, I would say Akala's an expert because I've seen him do kind of a lot of political commentary online. I've seen him obviously write books. I've seen him do a lot of like research and investigation, like documentaries and shows. Like, so he spent time like discussing and actually like looking into these issues in a investigative, journalistic type of way. Like, I wouldn't maybe put him up there next to like someone who might even be higher, maybe like a professor or something. Like, it's just degrees in it. But I would still say like he spent a lot of his life like dedicated to looking into this subject. So I can at least see that he has some level of expertise. But it's just degrees. Like, I'm a Man United fan and I have some level of expertise to Man United, but there's degrees. Like, I'm not going to know more than, I don't know, Rio Ferdinand, Alex Ferguson, whoever. Like, yeah.
Kofi, back to you. Good morning. Sorry, you haven't really had your say just yet. Please.
Yeah, no, sorry, I've got my daughter here with me, so I haven't been able to focus too much. Oh, yes. So on the Akala point, isn't Akala more of an expert because that's what Demi said, he's actually done research, he's actually gone to places, he hasn't effectively just read stuff off Google, read one book and then said, yeah, I'm an expert. He's actually been researching and etc. So
how do you know? How do you know? Is it based on what he is able to regurgitate?
But hasn't he done
I think the documentaries are public.
He's done documentaries.
So we can see that with our own eyes.
When you say he's done a documentary, has he not just regurgitated what he's read in the documentaries?
Yeah, but once you don't do a documentary, I'm sure you do further research. Yes, you research what you've read.
My point is that we call him an expert because he's well read.
No, but it's not to say. No, this is the thing. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not just being well read. It's actually going to same with the documentary. I'm sure he would have gone to the place or wherever his research was.
I don't want vagaries. When you say go to the place, I haven't seen his documentary. What does this speak to when you keep saying go to the place? What place?
Look, I haven't seen his documentary. I've seen clips, but I'm sure like he would have gone to. Well, if we're talking about Black British history, he would have gone to wherever say where the Windrush started.
See, they change the arguments for the people they like. That's what it is, man.
No, don't be disrespectful, man.
So
can you let him finish?
Black Rob,
what did I say?
Can I just support what Kofi is saying?
Yes, please.
So I think what Kofi's trying to say is obviously in order to complete a documentary, obviously, and this is the thing, Black Rob, it's not black and white. Like, I feel like you can't just say, oh, they changed their argument because of, like, it's not. Again, the degrees. I'm not saying Akala is the foremost expert. I'm just saying he has some level of expertise that the average person who's never picked up a book has. Like, I don't think that's a unreasonable or wild statement to make. He has a little bit, like, he's obviously read into the issues a little bit. He's obviously interviewed people. He's talked about these ideas publicly. He's like, so even that alone, to me, gives you a certain level more than the average person that's never picked up a book. So even if Akala wasn't famous on TV or doing whatever, the fact that he's read all these books and done the interviews and met with the people and actually done the journalistic kind of thing, and he's written articles, he's written books and so on, there's at least a level that he's gained now. Now then, if he maybe takes it to another level where, I don't know, he develops a theory or he does this or he does that, like, it just adds a more. It's not just a simple black and white of expert, no expert. Like, that's not, I don't think life works that way. Like,
so is Alex Jones an expert?
Alex Jones an expert on what?
On the stuff that he talks about.
What does he, I literally, I'm not familiar with most of the stuff that he talks about.
He talks about the deep state, politics. He talks about politics.
Has he worked in any of those fields or met any of those people and like interviewed them?
He's met a lot of the people. He's done documentaries. He's dedicated his life to it.
Okay, yeah, sure. I don't know much of his work. Yeah, sure. I guess he's an expert to an extent. Again, degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, Alex Jones is an expert on deep state, but doesn't mean I have to agree with him.
Okay. At least you guys are consistent, then that's fair.
Yeah, but we never started out to not be consistent. I feel like you're trying to get a gotcha. Like,
exactly.
we're not.
No, it's not a gotcha. I'm just
because you wanted to ask me that question for me to say that Alex Jones.
I didn't have any preconceived notions. You answered it, and then I accepted your answer.
Okay, cool, fair enough. I won't.
Bro, you literally just said that we changed our arguments to suit our. We changed our opinions or to suit our arguments. So
because you were saying that Carla was an expert, but then you expanded on why you thought it was an expert. Then I gave you other examples, and then you agreed. So then, okay, cool, you are being consistent. That's what you do. You ask more questions rather than. Do you know what I mean?
No, we said Carla is an expert because he done research. He's done actual, he's actually gone out to places to do his research and etc. And I think the point with regards to Dave Smith and we've got Douglas Murray, and what Douglas Murray was trying to get at was that you talk about certain things, but you've never really gone there. You never really actually done proper research on it, and that's where he was arguing from. Now, if you want to say you don't agree with Douglas Murray, fine. I mean, I personally don't agree with Douglas Murray, but at least he's gone to as he said, I think he's gone to Israel. Where he's done his research, he's actually gone to these places, exactly tried to study it, and then he's come up with his own opinions.
But you know,
fair enough.
And the other side of the Douglas
he's the
Murray
expert.
thing.
Yeah,
and the other side of the sorry.
I'll give you that he's an expert. Sorry. I'll give you that Douglas Murray's expert. I think the argument I'm making is that being intellectually honest supersedes expertise.
Do you agree, Demi?
I think that's where we disagree. I think that's where we massively disagree. Actually, yeah. I think that's where we massively disagree.
You say you disagree, but I think you agree with me because you, as you said, I think you saw that Douglas Murray looked like a fool in that interview, even though he's probably more academically knowledgeable. And then you also said that what's his name?
Dave Smith.
Wes Huff versus what's his name? What's the guy's name? Billy Carson. Wes Huff came out looking better. Because he was more intellectually honest and he was the expert. So I go back to what I was saying. In two different scenarios, the intellectually honest person seemed to have come out on top, even though in one scenario, the expert was the intellectually honest one, and the other scenario, the non-expert was intellectually honest. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're trying to say, but I think, Black Rob, I think you have a tendency to believe people are only intellectually honest when they agree with your world view. No, I know you're going to say no because obviously.
Naturally made a statement now. Back up.
But I think from listening to you, like a lot of the things that you might say, I think you place intellectual honesty with basically either going against the grain or generally accepting your worldview. While I don't agree with what Israel is doing in Palestine, there are many quote unquote experts that have done research in this field, and maybe some are paid. Obviously, a lot are paid. But generally speaking, there are experts that say, and again, it's about nuance, right? Like maybe you can take specific wars, maybe you can take the Nakba, maybe you can take 1967, maybe you can take the Oslo Accords. Like there are different specific issues that people argue on that maybe there are points of expertise that the experts that can point you to say Israel was maybe right in this specific scenario, maybe in 1967, maybe they were right in this specific scenario, maybe the fact, like whatever it is. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't believe people are intellectually dishonest just because they don't agree to my point. I can completely
disagree with
that's why I agree with Demi.
And neither do I. Do you know why? I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he spoke about the trans discussion, and he's like when he made the discussions about trans, he was like arguing for women's in men's or trans women in men's sports or vice versa. Now, if someone that was you get people that have degrees in social science and that they've been living in that echo chamber. I think someone that is a social studies person that's been in that world for a long time and made the same argument Neil deGrasse Tyson made, I would believe that they'll be in quote unquote intellectually honest to themselves because they genuinely believe the arguments that they're making, as opposed to people that make the same argument, but you can tell that it's incoherent with their thought process in other aspects. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, but just the other point I made. I understand roughly where you're getting at. But I think the reason I
disagree with that point, I can see when certain people are like, "Nah, you're pulling the move here."
But the reason I believe that you think people that disagree with you are being intellectually dishonest, because you've even done it in this conversation in the chat. You've said that, for instance, about that Pfizer thing, that I'm being obtuse, so using an ad hominem against me, right? Whereas most people in the chat can see exactly, if you look up in the chat, most people can see what you said initially, how I corrected you, and why those 2 points were different. Most people could see that because they even wrote that in the chat. But instead of just taking that point and kind of fair enough and maybe moving on to something else, you decided to say that I'm being obtuse, because I'm not being obtuse. I'm actually pointing out a matter of fact in difference of what you said versus what was actually written out. We can have a wider discussion about why some of those things are good or bad, but the actual point is a matter of fact. And that's what I mean by you think I'm being intellectually dishonest on that point because simply I don't agree with you when I've pointed out a matter of fact.
Okay, I don't think you're being intellectually dishonest. I think you're wrong. There's a difference.
But how am I wrong when the facts are there?
because we won't get into
We're
this
not
again.
relitigating this one.
No, but
They
but do you
said-
see what? But do you see what I'm saying?
No,
though,
okay,
Doc? Which
I
is-
can explain to you. I can explain to
yeah.
you. I told you that they said that they did not test for transmission before they launched the product.
Yes.
And that's what you said, the exact same thing. And also said that there was a marketing campaign about them. The whole marketing campaign around using the vaccine was about stopping transmission.
But you see, when I said they, and I said to you that Pfizer or Moderna never actually, so it was publicly available on record that they never tested transmission. When I said to you, politicians versus research versus tech companies versus biotech, whatever, they all have different agendas. And you can't just say they. Who is they? And they being in this case, because you've pulled out the Pfizer executive as being representing Pfizer, meaning that Pfizer said something before the fact, Pfizer said something after the fact. People in the chat know this because they've said the exact same thing about this to you. But
I was appealing to your that you needed the expert's opinion. That's why.
But you said Pfizer executive said this, which means Pfizer said this before, and then Pfizer said this after. Because we can just take that Pfizer executive represents Pfizer, and your point was that Pfizer themselves claimed something, and then after the fact they said something else, when categorically that is not true. Like categorically that is not true. Pfizer themselves, as being Pfizer executive representing them, didn't say that beforehand, and they were honest afterhand and still said the same thing, which is we didn't test the transmission.
You got me. Actually, you're right.
On that specific point, that's what I'm saying.
You're right. Now you made your point clear.
Next question.
Right.
Thank you for conceding. Next question. Who is more dangerous? Black Rob, who is more dangerous in this particular topic of discussion? Douglas Murray or Dave Smith?
That's a good question.
Who is more dangerous? See, but this is where bias comes in. I can be honest, where there's a bias because I would say that they both have the propensity to be dangerous because they both have platforms.
I think Douglas Smith is more dangerous.
I mean, they're both dangerous in their own way.
The thing is, we're both being biased. I think he's more dangerous because I think he's a liar. That's why.
Well, Douglas Murray.
Yeah.
I think he's a racist. I think that's why he's dangerous.
Yeah, he's a liar and he's racist. Yeah. I think he's a liar. That's why. I think he doesn't believe what he's saying, but that's why I believe he's more dangerous. I would actually, if they got like a rabbi on that was from Israel and he actually believes everything he's saying and he made the arguments for pro Israel, I would actually be more open to listen to him because I believe he believes what he's saying. Do you know what I'm saying?
You think that there can't be a rabbi plucked from Israel to agree?
Maybe,
with what
not Rabbi Shmuley aside. Okay, but I'll use the example.
From Israel. Because I don't think Rabbi Shmuley is from Israel. I think he's So,
but I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's someone they can find that actually believes the talking points. I
don't know if we should be getting too deep into these types of talks. I'm not gonna lie.
Essentially, what I'm asking is an expert who is operated in bad faith, who quote unquote has been paid for or has a particular bias.
That's more dangerous. Because they've got the people are going to see them with the backing and the evidence and the qualifications, and then you're giving up bad faith arguments or incorrect information. You're going to convince more people to do what they want to do. Even though
I think they actually work in the favor of their opposition. So I think Douglas Murray actually helped the other side by his display. So maybe someone that is in good faith.
Just on this matter, though. Just on this matter, I agree. But just on this matter,
who's more dangerous? I don't know.
Because I don't know. Douglas Murray has a problem with non-experts coming on podcasts. Podcasts are the new thing, right?
Yeah.
And when you have a big platform like Joe Rogan, where everybody's watching and they're just going to take whatever that person's seen as gospel. They become the new experts.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think, to be honest, the reason I understand, so I've always loved kind of long form debate and discussion for a long time. I've always been on TV. I remember when BBC back in the day used to do like really excellent debate platforms and kind of bring experts from different sides and bring people from different sides. And like, for instance, I don't know if any of you used to watch a show called The Big Questions, right?
Yeah.
They used to have and Douglas Murray was actually one of the regulars on that show. So that's how I started being familiar with Douglas Murray. This was like more than 10 years ago. Yeah. And the thing about that show and shows like that back then was, especially in terms of dictating or kind of setting public opinion, while they definitely gave you views from opposing sides, and Douglas Murray was usually a very view from opposing side from what I believed in, but what they usually did was they would bring people from all sides, people with genuine credentials, like that have studied, that have worked in the field, and then people with just kind of day-to-day, the average person would also be invited. Like they'd open it to the public as well. They'd open it to experts from both sides, obviously, who'd be given the most prominent voices in the front. And then you'd have your everyday people who didn't have as much specialist information as well on the show. So Douglas Murray, coming from that kind of mindset and that kind of debate format, I understand why he thinks this Joe Rogan style is extremely dangerous, because now it places the random average person on the street as the expert, and it's just not balanced. It's not balanced at all. I don't care what anyone says. It's so unbalanced.
Yeah, sorry, can I quickly cut in? What Demi said is correct. And actually, what Ed made was the better point. The real dangerous person is Joe Rogan, because he's putting in people he's putting in people who are experts on both sides. So you can have Douglas Murray, but you can have another, say what's his name? Let's see, Dave Smith's point of view, but you got an actual expert there who can counteract with Douglas Murray, or in general, you just get two actual experts on the show, one left wing, one right wing, or whatever the case would be, and then you can have a proper nuanced debate. As Demi said, we would have on big questions back in the day, and then that for me would produce a better argument.
Let me push back on that a bit. Let me push back, because the actual clip that we're even looking at, he's basically gotten the expert on, and he sat opposite a non-expert, and the majority of people I've seen on the internet outside of pro-Israel or pro-Zionist positions agree that Douglas Murray, the expert, did not come out smelling of roses.
But why do you think
where have you seen that? I haven't seen that.
The most of the comments say Douglas Murray came off badly, most of the Twitter commentary. But what I'm saying is, why do you, and while I also disagree with Douglas Murray and agree with Dave Smith in a lot of the points that he was making, is why do you think that the public opinion is what determines correctness in the debate?
I don't think it does. I think that...
So why are you referencing that?
Because he just said just now that he should get two experts on the field in order to, battle it out, right?
No.
From that particular example, that non-expert is not even in... He's fighting Tyson, essentially, based on his principle.
No, but again, why are you so two things. One, why are you referencing the public opinion as to say whether or not that? Because, for instance, if we sat down like a bunch of like the public in the UK and we debated like black issues, like actual black issues that are important to us, most of them are going to disagree with us, like, and how we see these issues. Like, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I hear what you're saying, but when did I say that the public opinion, the public's response was evidence that Dave was talking the truth? When did I say that?
It seems like that's what you were saying.
No. Well, let me clarify. I just said this was the response. This example of what should happen that Kofi introduced, two experts in the field battling it out. This non-expert, he's unqualified for this particular example, right? Because he's come into the ring with a heavyweight. And off the back of that, the heavyweight still didn't win. So what Kofi wants, sometimes it still doesn't happen.
But you see the framing of the framing of the win. You keep so who's deciding this win? Like, that's why I keep saying that you're making a point that public opinion is what determines. Like I said again, while I agree with most of the points Dave Smith made and disagree with most of the points Douglas Murray made, this win that you keep referencing, like
I'm sorry, that seems to be a little trigger. Let me go back to what Kofi began by saying. Remember, this is Kofi's point I am responding to, right?
Yes.
Kofi's suggesting that Joe Rogan is at fault. He's the main culprit here, right?
Yes,
and he
100%.
would prefer if Joe Rogan platformed two experts in the field. Am I correct so far?
I'm right. 100%.
Yes? And even though he didn't, even though the expert on that particular forum spoke well, the non-expert spoke well, Kofi doesn't side with Douglas Murray.
I
don't side with Douglas Murray, but based on his political views. That doesn't mean his argument was... I thought his actual argument about knowing what you're talking about was better than Dave. Was it Dave Smith?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I broadly agree with that, actually, because I think while I disagree with Douglas Murray's political leanings. Like I don't think his actual argumentation in a lot of ways was bad. And I think the internet is representing his argumentation in a very weird way, because obviously most of us disagree with Israel's point of view. Therefore, anything that promotes that, we will automatically. And this is a point that Black Rob makes a lot, which is that just because you disagree on one side doesn't mean you can't take points. Like, and I think that's really important. So Black Rob always makes this point about, the left always does this, and they don't kind of take and they don't see things from both sides. And I think it's important. Just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you can't see certain, like not everything they say is wrong just because you disagree with someone.
Exactly. So that's exactly the point I was making.
But
Yeah,
also,
I don't agree with Douglas Murray, but the point he was making was a lot more coherent than a guy who just like, oh yeah, I get my information from here, and this is what I feel. It's like, man, you don't come out with any true evidence apart from stuff you see from Google, stuff you've seen from a couple of books. And
Let me push back on that. Let me push back on that. Kofi, do you know? Sorry, do you know exactly the topic of discussion that informed or incentivized Douglas Murray to even introduce this particular concept of non-experts talking on things that only experts should be speaking about? Do you know what informed that?
He started about, basically, he was talking about the crossings, I think, in Rafah, and he said, and then Douglas Murray said, have you ever even seen the crossing?
No, but man, he came into this as a fierce Zionist, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry,
he didn't like the fact that the people that, he mentioned two names. He mentioned another guy.
Yeah, a couple of guys.
Not Danny, but some other guy who came and just spouted a whole set of stuff.
They were talking about Churchill. They were talking about a different issue.
And he also talked about Ian. What's his name?
Ian something. Yeah, but
it said
the guy that was positing a lot of theories about World War II and Churchill,
and also Israel, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he had, before anybody started their greetings, he started with a particular point.
Yeah,
right?
No, but we're not disagreeing with you that he has an agenda. Like
but this is important. This is important. This is very important. Darryl Cooper, this is important because he came in with an agenda. He came in with a bias.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And bearing in mind, you believe that he is a paid shill for Israel. Mm-hmm. You, Demi, mm-hmm. you believe that, right? So he's coming on.
Please don't put words in my mouth. I don't believe anything about anyone that's not confirmed.
So you don't believe? I thought you said you think that he's paid by AIPAC. That's what.
Very chess, man.
No, generally, I'm just trying to. But yeah, generally speaking, sure. I think he's biased and he's compromised.
I only said that because you said he is paid by AIPAC.
No, I'll just leave it at that. He's biased and he's compromised. I don't know what he's paying anybody. Sorry.
Brother, I only mentioned it because you said that.
I'm just okay. Sure.
But it's important when you do this with me. It's important because I can't move past it. Do you understand? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
He's compromised. That's all. I don't know where from. I don't know how, but just take it as you will and understand what.
All right. So with whatever evidence you've seen, you believe he's compromised, right?
Yeah.
But stick to what it is that you've been positing.
Cool. Yeah. You know how Black Rob says you can just see new information and realize maybe you should not talk as much. Yeah. It's just.
I just go wear a mask.
Okay.
Cool.
Where was my thought? So he's come on with a particular agenda. He wants to correct any quote unquote disinformation, misinformation that he believes goes against his mission, right? Because they're on the biggest platform that he believes that people tune into and just blindly just follow, right? So he's come on to just correct it. And off the back of that, he is hitting at the concept that people who are not studied in that particular arena should not be platformed to speak on things, right? Now, I agree with...
I don't think that's the exact point he was making, to be fair, but please continue.
You say it again?
I don't think that was the exact point he was making.
What was the exact point he was trying to make?
Actually, he did say that.
Because he said different things. He said several different things. You're saying that wasn't the exact point. Tell me the exact point he was trying to make.
I'll tell you the exact point that I'm making and the exact point I believe he's making. So, again, I think people are deceptively reframing this as a demand that we only listen to experts. So just like what you've just done, you're deceptively reframing this as him saying we should never give any voice to anyone and only experts can speak on topic. That's not what I think he's saying, and that's certainly not what I'm saying. It's that the non-experts so I'm actually reading this from something I saw online because it kind of succinctly described my point. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I'm reading. It's that the non-experts who present themselves as authorities on subjects should also face equal scrutiny for being consistently wrong on topics in the same way that experts are scrutinized or criticized, for example, for having an agenda or being part of an establishment. It's just the level of scrutiny that isn't placed on non-experts because, and I quote Douglas Murray when he says this, it's like fighting jelly. Like once you criticize them, immediately they're no longer, they're not, oh, I'm not an expert, just a comedian, whatever. So it doesn't matter. But then they can also freely make their point so it's that thing. It's not that they can't speak, but it's just that as soon as anyone then criticizes them, because obviously they might have an agenda or they might be wrong on something, it's like, oh, well, no, I'm not an expert anyway, so who cares? So it's like they can have all the good of presenting the point unchallenged, and then the bad of being wrong, they face little to no criticism. That's the issue.
No, I think that it's wait. I think it's completely clear, and I'm going to state it on my end that I know that is one of the points he made because it's in the clip. I'm aware. I watched the entire thing. I know that's one of the points he made. Bear in mind, I think at some point in time in this exchange, I asked you if it is he was speaking to or making the point to Dave Smith, or whether it was Daryl Cooper or Ian Cooper or whatever.
Yeah. I answered you, and I said, I think he was making a point towards the other people who was making a point in general. No, I did.
You did say that. But I think he was also targeting Dave as well.
Yeah, he was targeting all of them, as in all of them together. But
and I want you to be honest, because I believe even if it is he didn't directly look at Dave and say you are also one of those people.
No, I think it was implied to Dave as well. It was definitely implied. But
because he also pointed out that Dave, you're a comedian.
Yeah, no, Brent. I'm not saying that he's not direct. I'm not saying that he's not talking to. I'm saying he's talking to Dave. He's talking to the other guy. He's talking to all of them, like Dave included. But what I'm saying is the reason that it's not specific to Dave is because it's not that he believes that Dave shouldn't have a voice at all. It's the point I've just read to you about reframing this about non-experts shouldn't be able to speak.
I understand what you said, and let me just repeat it so that you know that I understand what you've said. If Dave gets something wrong, he shouldn't just hold his hand up, or Joe Rogan shouldn't be like, well, he never said he was an expert. He's a comedian. The same scrutiny.
Sorry.
The same scrutiny or possible consequence that may come from an expert getting something wrong. If you've waded into a discourse where you give a little disclaimer, hey, I'm not an expert in this, but here are my opinions anyway. And that particular platform is broadcasted to the world. And if it's not challenged and it's wrong, it's dangerous. I understand that. I understand that point he was making. But like I framed this to say, when he was coming into this debate, what narrative, what agenda did he want to course correct?
Oh, I know the exact agenda he was trying to course correct, and while I completely disagree with the points that he's making on that agenda, I just happen to agree with the point. That
Wonderful.
He's
making now, for me, the problem in not looking to go to the source, the beginning, the genesis, is that if people are listening to this debate and you make a fantastic argument, because you've been making fantastic arguments against Black Rob, 100%, people could walk away thinking that whatever Dave was saying was
incorrect. Yes, I agree with you, and it shouldn't be framed that way. It shouldn't be framed. But what I'm saying is that there shouldn't be an expectation of Dave to be an arbiter of free, independent, factual information, because he's not an expert in this field, as he said himself. So it shouldn't be. So the argument that I'm trying to make is that it shouldn't be expected of Dave that everything he's saying is correct, or that he should be an authority on this issue. However, as a person, for instance, we are people. I can go outside and have conversations with different people about different things. It shouldn't be now like. Unfortunately, because Joe Rogan is a massive, massive platform, when you put people on there unchallenged, whatever they are saying, whether it's like dinner table conversations, you have conversations about random topics, whether it's like you with your UFOs or this, that, and the other, like it becomes a point of reference. And when Joe Rogan was saying, oh, this guy, he did 30 hours of podcasting, and Douglas Murray was like, what, 30 hours? You do that in a week? How does that work? Like Joe Rogan genuinely was like, have you looked at his work? And the work he referenced was 30 hours of podcasting. Like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, that's not work.
I think that's the main thing you touched on, is that because Joe Rogan's platform is so big, I think what happens is that the establishment are realizing that the podcasts are getting more views, more eyeballs than the media outlets, and now they're worried that they can't control it. And I think that's what the problem is. Douglas Murray is in the yesteryear, he could funnel his propaganda agenda, whatever, through the channels in which like the TV, newspaper, whatever. And now that people are looking to independent outlets, they're trying to almost like force them into to platforming the people that they want to. But you can't bully Joe Rogan into platforming.
Uncontested and uninterrupted, mind you. Uncontested and uninterrupted. When Douglas Murray used to be pulled into those mainstream platforms to push agendas, it was never pushed back on. Ever.
Exactly.
So now you have this new media propping up, coming up now.
Sorry.
No, I think we have to disagree with that. So the example that me and Kofi gave about the big questions, for example, was a perfect platform of
that's a debate. That's fair.
So Douglas Murray himself used to be on these platforms all the time, and it was always challenged, whether it was his Islam issues.
Stop. Bear in mind, my introduction to Douglas Murray has only come during this particular Israel-Palestine thing. Wait a minute. Let me finish my thought. My introduction to Douglas Murray has only been that. So I haven't put in the quote-unquote research that you could now tell me I haven't done my research. That's fine. My only introduction to him is first on Piers Morgan. Every single time that Piers Morgan had to pull somebody out to basically contest somebody else, it was Douglas Murray. Right? Yeah. So my introduction to him, 100%, is limited. So if you're going to tell me the other platforms that he was pulled on, he was contested, lovely.
Yes. So I just wanted to, that was the only point I wanted to correct, which is that on that point where you said, Douglas Murray would go on old media and all, like every time I've seen Douglas Murray, because he spent a lot of time in the sort of 2010s talking about Islam, and there would always be a Muslim on the opposite side, whether it's on Big Questions, whether it's on any BBC, like there would always be a Muslim on the other side. Now, obviously, he still got to air his views, but with an actual expert on Islam, for example, because he spent a lot of time talking about Islam and Islamic culture, there would always be a Muslim on the other side from every time I've seen him. So that point about the traditional media not wanting to platform him and give him free reign to talk about whatever rubbish he's talking about, in the years that I've watched Douglas Murray, it was either on debates or on TV interviews where there was always a Muslim on the other side, for example, on topics of Islam.
How about the topics of Israel?
Yeah. So like on Big Questions, they discussed it. That was actually a really big debate. I remember they discussed Israel on Big Questions, and it was the same format. They had Douglas Murray and the Zionists. They had obviously Palestinian people, experts in history, people that supported Palestine, and then general public. Some were for, some were against. And it was. I remember that one was a big debate.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Kofi, just you want to respond to anything that I'd said, or just add anything before I say hello to Emmanuel, because he's been here waiting patiently.
No problem. Yeah, Demi really took my point. When you said Douglas Murray wasn't challenged previously, but you have now said that your knowledge of him was limited. So I just want to copy on what Demi said, that he was challenged a lot back in the day on Big Questions. Even I think he may have been on Question Time as well. And on those platforms, he's challenged.
He was actually heavily challenged, because I think the mainstream...
He's a debater. He's actually a debater.
Plus, even on like mainstream, like normal channels, I think the mainstream see him as... He's framed or put as a bit more of an extreme... Not an extremist, but certainly more to the right or farther right than a typical kind of mainstream would accept. So they already frame him as that anyway. So on the mainstream, you're not... Douglas Murray is extreme for the mainstream, I put it that way.
Controlled opposition.
While I agree with that, but what I'm saying is he's not he's not your mainstream like bread and butter guy. Do you know what I mean? Like
yes,
I feel like obviously because if you've not had a
I take your point. Let me literally push back on one of those aspects, one of those things that you just said. So I've only seen him on Piers Morgan talking about Israel, right? And he's not contested. Right.
Yeah, but you know
and
what?
He's given when he is on there with other people, he is given leeway to basically push more of his agenda than the other person. So I'm aware that particular platform has a particular bias.
Yeah. So
right?
you know that platform. So that's all
the same way Joe Rogan has a big platform, and he allows people to come on there. And spout what they want to spout. He's a curious guy. He asks certain questions. Bear in mind, Joe Rogan is also biased. And he has built his platform off of that bias, right?
Yes, yeah.
And there is no legal restrictions on Joe Rogan, who he needs to bring on, who he doesn't need to bring on, right? And I'm not sure if he's put his hand up to say that his platform is completely unbiased. This is where you need to come and get unbiased long-form content, right? So the same way you would say that it's dangerous for Joe Rogan to platform those people, he, as in Douglas Murray, has benefited from being on big platforms, uncontested. Do you understand what I'm saying? He has.
Oh yeah, I don't
been a
disagree
benefactor, of that same privilege.
So I don't disagree with the characterization you made of Joe Rogan's platform. I think you can make those of Piers Morgan's platform definitely as well. And I'd say Piers Morgan is probably slightly more mainstream than so Joe Rogan is big, but in terms of like mainstream consciousness, I think Piers Morgan would probably be closer to the center of like normal discourse. Like Joe Rogan's probably still, even though it's big, it's probably seen a bit more as out there. But I think what I would say about that is that I think we should, from our public platforms, especially the biggest public platforms, we shouldn't demand that they're free of bias. What we should demand is that they're free of misinformation. Like you can present correct information while using your own bias in a different way, like to promote your agenda. But I think what we should be demanding from these big platforms is correct and factual information. Now, if your correct and factual information leads you to a different conclusion, that I am happy to accept. No problem.
That's
but
an interesting
I just think,
take. And I know what you're saying. I agree in principle and spirit. I 100% agree. But you also know that this correct information is just what we're told is correct.
Yeah. To some extent. Yeah. No, agreed.
And also the omission of information can also be propaganda in itself. I don't want to keep going back to this, but it's like when, broadly speaking, we don't need to go back, but like with the COVID, any dissenting opinions about was do you remember YouTube where you couldn't even say the word and your channel would get like so only one side of the argument was being presented, but
why do you think that was though, Black Rob?
Which is a good point. My opinions. Which is a good point.
Yeah. So why do you think that was? Because when certain arguments, when you present it with both sides, people aren't as stupid as you think. When you present it with both sides logically, then maybe more people would have not got it than would have got the vaccine.
Now say the good faith response to that question.
Oh, me.
No, Demi. I know you've asked the question, but he's gone for the other one. Say the good intent one.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Black Rob. Intellectual dishonesty.
Black Rob, intellectual dishonesty.
Is that intellectual dishonesty? I just said that. What you'll be unless people get the jab. If you get both.
Oh my gosh.
If you get both sides.
Yo.
No, so let me be really plain about it. So this is the thing, right? Like, there's so many ways to go around this, and obviously the thing is, it's clear to I think all of us having this conversation that you obviously have a specific penchant for this anti-vaccine side. Therefore, a lot of the things that you're going to cite and point to will obviously confirm that bias, which is fine. That's a normal human. Yeah. So that's a normal human trait, and likewise.
In general.
Yeah. So when I asked you that question about why do you think that it was the information was censored in a way, it's because I think I'm trying to get you to understand that while I get that there is reason to be skeptical, I think the problem is when you say opposing or because this is the thing, we only have the information that we have, right? So that's fair enough. And when you say, when people are presenting with both sides, like it's like I don't know if you watched that Jubilee debate recently between that doctor. And like a bunch of randoms,
I saw that, Dr. Mike.
with like 20 randoms. And a lot of the points they were making, you can see why this debate is difficult to kind of platform as like a both sides kind of issue, because so whether or not you agree or disagree, the general medical community consensus is that the COVID vaccines were overall safe and effective. Obviously, there are kind of certain side effects that happen, but the general medical community consensus is that there are some doctors individually that may go against that. Obviously, they are still experts. But obviously, when the consensus of, the subject and the topic is this, regardless of whether they're an expert or not, they can only cite the facts. And the facts are the medical community consensus and the research consensus that they are safe and effective. So while you may disagree or have views about that industry itself, you can't take away from the fact that is, as far as public opinion goes, that is the general medical consensus. So if you want to do
silence in the opposite opposing view.
No, but the reason you silence the opposite view is because if you want to do a both sides, that's not really an equivalent both sides. It's like people that are not experts in this field, a lot of them were the ones kind of doing this second opinion thing. So as much as, and again, I'm going back to the football thing. I know this isn't completely like, you can't, it's not exactly the same, but you can see why people, for instance, most football managers believe that you should have a striker because, you know, it makes sense, or you should have a goalkeeper. Let's say, for example, while that is the general consensus of football managers, that's just it's not completely actual. Like, you can't play football without a goalkeeper, but realistically, 99.999% of football managers are going to tell you need a goalkeeper. Now, there are going to be some people that say, you know, you can play without a goalkeeper, and it, you know, it increases your chances in opposition areas. You'll have more domination of possession in midfield, blah blah. But reality is, it's just not an opinion that really stacks up to the football community.
Yeah, but if it isn't, then what happens is that there's so many situations where there's harebrained ideas by fringe groups that are allowed to reign free because they're so stupid that they don't get any traction. When you silence the person.
But you see, when it's an issue of like so again, if you imagine you're a public health. So I remember we had
last thought on this, please, Demi. Last thought on this.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into this, but I remember we had a discussion and we talked about public health specifically, right? So obviously, when it's about policy making and kind of macro issues, like, as much as you can, if this is the general consensus, and let's take everything at face value, and we say that the general consensus of the research community is that this thing is safe and effective, and we need to kind of curb this issue, like, on a face value basis. As a person making policy on kind of macro issues, could you not see why someone would make that policy decision to say, let's not kind of delve into these fringe ideas because we can't even verify the veracity of these fringe ideas to, like, the cost versus...
There's a difference between ignoring it and actively suppressing it, you know, right?
Last thought on this, Black Rob, before I say hello to Emmanuel. Oh, he's gone again.
So like holistic health and all that stuff, it's not suppressed, but it's ignored a lot of time.
No, but that's different though, because that's not holistic health. Isn't kind of, it's not. We're not in the middle of a like people just dying, dropping every day because of a specific disease that holistic health is promoting an alternative cure.
That's
like
what they're doing. It's in times of fear.
No, but what I'm saying is, the holistic health industry, right? It exists, and some people laugh at it, some people don't. But it's not being presented as an alternative to in a very specific time of danger. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's not a very specific time window of there's this disease, and it's either there's a holistic health option, and
times of danger that they impose the wildest stuff, and people accept it because fear is the best way to implement things that don't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then in that case, why don't they just keep doing that like consistently to us then?
Yeah, it's a different thing each time. Patriot Act, 9/11. There's different things. They fair tactics, but you have to change the strategy. But anyway, what I'm saying is that suppression is different to ignoring something. If there's a fringe idea that's stupid, normally the free market of ideas will mean that most people will see as stupid, and then.
But you see when Brent asked you what is the good faith answer to the question that he asked you, which is that it's not that you ignoring and suppress. Like, you couldn't really ignore the anti-vax. Like, whenever any vaccine, whether COVID or not, comes up, there's always gonna be those anti-vax people. Like, obviously, I'm not saying everyone who's anti-COVID vaccine is anti-every vaccine, but whenever a vaccine in general comes up, there's always gonna be those people. So it's hard to ignore, and especially when you're trying to create a situation where you create herd immunity and you need a certain number of people to take it because, you know, then it's gonna work for like. So even if some of those detractors still don't take it, overall we'll get like a certain portion of coverage for the rest of it. Like, when you're trying to create that situation, again, if we're taking it in the good faith element of this debate, when you're trying to do that, there is no other way of doing that other than suppressing the fringe ideas that have necessarily no direct proof. Now, obviously, if you want to get into the technicalities, obviously I get that there are things to be concerned about with how they proselytized it and blah blah blah, but if we're just looking at it on face value, like, it's not, I just don't feel that it doesn't necessitate like a nefarious element from just looking at it on the face value.
So you're not pro free speech in every serious situation, then, are you?
No, I never said I was.
Okay, cool. That's fair. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Any last thoughts on that particular topic? I wanna play another video, not about this topic, by the way, before we move on, and also Kofi afterwards.
I'm good, thank you.
Can you speak up, please, Joshua? Sorry.
All I'll say is this: when you have on day, the day after today, is a request of mine. Can you start putting more left-wing people on the show?
Most people on the show are left wing, you know.
I don't think most people on this show are left-wing.
It's just
Are
the
you talking
callers
about
in.
Joe Rogan?
Left wing.
No, not Joe Rogan. On this show, the day after.
Well, why did Black Rob just align me to a wing without my own?
Sorry, are you? Sorry. I apologize. Are you not?
Well, I don't know what wing I am on, to be honest. I just
All right,
have views in it.
Interesting. So why do you want more left-wing people?
So this is just a personal point of view. When E-Man goes on his stuff about tax and wealth and whatnot, I just feel that we haven't got enough. We've never had anyone from the left-wing point of view to combat E-Man on his points of view. It's just a personal preference.
Do you think he's a Dave Smith in this scenario?
Who, E-Man?
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying he's a Dave Smith. I just want someone.
Are you not brave enough to say he's a Dave Smith? So I want you to be brave enough to say something.
Why do you want me to call him a Dave Smith?
Because you're implying. I think you're implying that he spoke rubbish.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Do you think he's an expert?
What on
Hey! Do you think he's an
expert?
expert?
You can say he's an expert.
So we should be listening to the experts, no?
No. I'm saying you should get someone who's left wing. You see that guy Femi? I think his name's Femi.
Yeah, Femi.
Someone like that. Just to come again. I just want him to come against E-Man on that point of view. That's it. When E-Man gets into stuff about tax and no tax and whatnot, how it's not beneficial.
I would like for you, each time it is Emmanuel's getting into his bag, for you to jump on Discord and be the Femi you want to see.
I can't do that all the time. Man, today I've got a day off, but most of the time I'm working.
But this leads on to my next question, right? My next question is, when we're talking about the LGBTQ community, should we have representatives based on which particular identity we're talking about on the show?
No, that would be a good idea.
So we should.
If you want a real debate, balanced view, you probably need to have someone on that show. I might not agree with them, but they've gone through the lived experience, so they can actually debate you properly on it. Because if you have people who are already against it, and then we try to have a debate on it, it's not going to work because we're already against it. So you're not going to see another point of view.
I'm not against it. What are you talking about? Speak for yourself.
I'll
Don't group me into it. I'm like Demi. Don't wing me. Don't wing me.
No, do you know what? The thing is with that voices, I think, to be honest, I would like to see a plurality of voices on the show. But what I would like to see is people being empowered to challenge misinformation where it's presented. So, for instance, and I keep referring back to this thing you did, Brent, about taking public opinion as if that then means the result of the debate is one way or the other. Correct is correct. Public opinion doesn't. So even if the chat completely disagrees with someone fully, if what they're saying is actually correct, then it's correct. That's just the only thing that my focus is misinformation.
Question: if the public want the thing that's incorrect in a democracy, isn't that what they've chosen?
Sure, but then I think still it doesn't mean it's correct. So again, it's not. So this what I'm arguing is different from like personal opinion versus fact. So for instance, the public might want low tax. That's just an opinion. However, if the public are being told that low tax will mean that each of you will become a millionaire, that's just a lie. That's misinformation. Do you see how those two things?
No,
are different?
I'm not. I don't think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. I'm now asking a different question, right? If the public has been fed that the immigrants that have come to the country are responsible for their economic position, right? And they vote for them to be removed. Isn't that what the public want? Democracy, right?
No, but then that just goes back to my point again, which is why we have to tackle the misinformation, because then people can actually make decisions that are logical. So obviously, if the public is being fed a diet of immigrants are doing X, Y, and Z to you, and then the public eventually decide to vote to something about kick out all the terrorists, that to me is literally misinformation, then informing public opinion, which then is the issue.
All right.
Obviously,
No, I understand
they're
what you're
not
saying.
able to exercise
There
their
are
free.
lies that
not able
people
to-
believe or believe are true, and they move from that, right? And then there are veiled positions. There are positions taken, and the reason for taking a position is hidden from people. For example, if there is a racist or group of racists not wanting to see their neighborhood overrun by browns and blacks, they may hear a politician say a lie. They may know it's a lie, but they will still go with it because that's what they want.
Yeah.
And with Douglas Murray, he came on having an opinion on the topic of Israel that is biased, right? It doesn't speak to him knowing the truth. It's his version of, no, whatever you say, I need to discredit you in a different way because I can't argue the facts. I'm not going to be going back and forth with you on the facts or the stats. I'm going to discredit you even having a voice in order to get my particular agenda across.
What did Douglas Murray lie about? Just out of curiosity, actually, because I want to get your opinion.
Did I say he lied?
No, isn't that what you said?
I said he came on with an agenda, right?
No, you said that he lied.
No, I said he's not arguing the facts or the stats of what Dave was.
No, he did at certain points.
Not for the Israel thing.
No, so when he talked about, for instance,
Churchill.
No, yeah, when he talked about Churchill,
but that wasn't Dave's point.
When he talked about the wars that America was engaged in, when he talked about
even in that exchange, he tried to basically focus on him saying we.
On which one was that? No, I think he was focused on the difference between war and engagement, for example. And he said, I think he said we, but again, obviously, Dave interpreted that in a very literal way, which I don't.
What I took from that was that he was trying to basically knock him off his path.
His soapbox, yeah. No, but I can see how you can interpret that, but again, it's not that your interpretation isn't fact, is what I'm saying.
I didn't say it was, by the way, and your interpretation isn't fact either.
Yeah, no, agreed. So
right,
that's
so
what I'm saying.
We're fine just sharing
but then that's why I'm saying that we can't then put that onto what Douglas Murray is saying, because only he can put onto what he's saying what he means.
I'm talking about the issue of Israel. I like the specificity of anything we're talking about. The issue of Israel, he came in with an agenda, right? And what he as in Dave Smith was saying, he gave examples.
No, so did Dave, by the way.
Yeah, I'm aware. He, as in Joe Rogan, invited both of them for that particular purpose. No.
Yeah.
I'm aware. But in the back and forth, less was focused.
I'm gonna have to go in a second.
You can go right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna dip. I got work.
You both you can go. I don't need your bye. Sorry, thank you very much for being the superheroes of this particular stream. Love you dearly. Thank you very much, Black Rob. Thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Even though you didn't contribute, can you jump on, because I can see you in the live chat. Can you jump on and look to defend your position of being a non-expert and speaking on things expertly? Can you jump on and say the final words, please? But thank you very much, Demi. I loved your position. I loved your ability to say, wait a minute, let me get some evidence to back up my point and come back and present it. I loved all of that. And this is what this platform is for. So this is an example of what I think Kofi was saying there needs to be more of. There being people to be able to push back on things that are said that may be wild and may constitute as misinformation, disinformation. It's very, very important that we have people like you in the mix to come through and say what you say. Also you, Black Rob, obviously, but you're hella biased when it comes to...
sorry, let me just open.
Emmanuel, can you just come and say goodbye to the people, please? Whenever you can. Thank you very much. Before I go, I'm going to play an audio. It's actually a video, but I don't know what has happened to my flipping computer. It's not even showing this this screen properly. It's just come up with this stupidness. But anyway, I've been seeing a lot of TikToks, people in China coming out and basically saying to the world, hey, this is what's happening behind this curtain, right? It's all been a scam. Right? all you people paying bare money to buy these products, it's being made for cents on the dollar over here, and a logo is just slapped on it. Now, I know a lot of you already know that, but them saying this and it's spreading like wildfire. My question is, do you think that life and habits, spending habits, are going to change off the back of this trade war? Sorry if I'm using war incorrectly here, Douglas. Do you think that things are going to change based on all of this whistleblowing, quote unquote whistleblowing that's happening?
Your Nike and Adidas shoes, 80% are made in China and cost only $15. They just add a logo in the US or Germany and charge you 5 to 15 times the price. Close your eyes. If your Nike and Adidas shoes says made in China, will you feel cheaper? No, it's not about quality. It's about brand washing. Interesting fact, who makes Nike and Adidas shoes? 42% are crafted by Chinese artisans. We don't do cheap goods. We do understand luxury. Why spend $50 to $200 on Nike or Adidas? The same leather, the same craftsmanship, just without the luxury logo. Be the trader. You can buy Nike or Adidas from China online, like 1688, or you can even go directly to Putian, Fujian in China. For more details, please visit GoNest.
Bars. I have another clip I sent myself. Hold up, let me just play it. It's a Chinese gentleman, and he stood in front of a whole set of stock, all these bags, all these beautiful bags that cost thousands of pounds and dollars. Hold up. Let me run that back. Let's play the audio because the video ain't working.
Do you recognize this style, this bag? Of course you do. For the past more than 30 years, we have been the OEM factory for most of the luxury brands around the world. Gucci, Prada, Coach, Louis Vuitton, you name it. But for this, I am not proud because we were only making our wages. The profit margin for the people who are actually making the bags are very low. What I'm really proud of is that first, we have the best quality control. Two, we have the best craftsmanship. You know, Chinese craftsmen are always intelligent and diligent. Three, we have the most complete supply chain. We always get what we want, like zippers, accessories of any kind, any color, and leathers immediately. Now, as the USA and its little European brothers are trying to refuse Chinese goods, don't you think luxury brands are not trying to move their OEM out of China? Yes, they did, but they failed because the OEM factories out of China, they don't have good quality control and they don't have as good craftsmanship. Their workers are either too expensive or too lazy. Three, they don't have any supply chain. They always have trouble getting leather or zippers or any accessories. That is why they failed, and that is why we will always be the best OEM factory for luxury brands. Why don't you just contact us and buy from us? You won't believe the prices we give you.
Bear in mind, let me just explain again. I can't show anything on the screen because my computer is glitching. My Mac is doing all sorts, so I can only play the audio. But I guess maybe tomorrow we can kind of briefly touch on this. I think Maggie had asked the question, maybe it was Maggie, for us to kind of go a bit deeper into the ramifications of this particular trade war that Trump has begun. But I find it really interesting because I think this is a secret that everybody's, well, not everybody, most people have come across in their lifetime, that the products that they're buying are being made for dirt cheap elsewhere, and it's just the brand that they are paying those or going into poverty for, that they actually like, I don't know what I just said, scratch that. Anyway, my apologies, I'm very tired. We will talk about it sometime when the screen is working. Let me just run through the headlines, not the actual substance of the text, just the headlines, the titles, and then close out the show. Thank you very much for being patient with me. Thank you for staying to hear the fantastic debate that those community contributors were giving us. And long may that continue. All right, first one. At least 34 people killed in Russian ballistic missile attack on Sumy. Next one, which is a trigger warning. Man arrested after suspected arson attack at Pennsylvania governor's home. That sounds like a juicy one. Not getting into it. Number 3, race to keep British steel furnaces running. Very important. Next headline. Trigger warning. Body found in Thames amid search for missing 11-year-old Kalia Koya. I think I'm going to read this. A body has been found. Trigger warning. A body has been found in the River Thames in a search for 11-year-old Kalia Koya, who entered the river in North Woolwich on 31st of March, police have said. According to the Metropolitan Police, officers were alerted to a body in Maritime Quay in East London at about 9 a.m. on Sunday. Kalia is said to have been playing on a school inset day when she entered the water near Barge House Causeway, close to London City Airport. Barge House Causeway is a concrete slope that goes directly into the Thames, and is used to transport boats. Local residents noted that the slope appeared to be covered in moss and was slippery. They said they heard shouts and screams, while other children who were playing said a girl had disappeared in the water and they could not find her. One woman, Kerry B, 62, had taken a life ring to the water but could not see Kalia. She later found shoes and a sock, coat and phone by the river which she passed to police. While the body is yet to be formally identified, the girl's family have been informed of the development and are being supported by specialist officers. The family have asked that their privacy is respected at this time, the force added. Secondly, man killed in a house explosion. Man has died in a house explosion that wrecked multiple properties and led to dozens of evacuations. Homes in John Street, Workshop, Nottinghamshire, were evacuated and emergency services were called to the scene just before 8 o'clock on Saturday. The terraced home where the explosion happened was destroyed and 2 neighboring houses had partially collapsed, with 8 other properties and 20 cars damaged by debris. Next one. Army experts called in over Birmingham bin strike. This is important. Hold up. Military planners have been called in to help tackle mounting piles of rubbish in Birmingham following a month-long strike by refuse workers. That is crazy. Pile up. Thousands of tons of uncollected rubbish line the city's streets due to the all-out strike by Unite Union members that began on 11th of March. The city council has declared a major incident and asked neighbouring authorities to help tackle the crisis. Pay the bin men! Now, after a government appeal to the army, a small number of office-based planners will provide logistical support for a short time. Soldiers are not being deployed to collect rubbish. I didn't think they were. A government spokesman said the government has already provided a number of staff to support the council with logistics and make sure the response on the ground is swift to address the associated public health risks. In light of the ongoing public health risk, a small number of office-based military personnel with operational planning expertise have been made available to Birmingham City. Shout out Birmingham. Shout out Brum. Council to further support in this area. Striking workers will vote as a partial deal to end the strike on Monday, Unite has said. Pay the bin men! And final headlines. Trigger warning, I've already got it up. More than 200 civilians killed as Sudan's RSF attacks Darfur displacement camps. Parliamentaries in Sudan have murdered more than 200 civilians in a wave of attacks in displacement camps and around the city of El Fasher, or Fasher, the last big city still in the hands of the Sudanese army in the Darfur region. The death includes at least 56 civilians killed by the Rapid Support Forces over 2 days of attacks in Kada, a town they seized on the road to El Fasher. The violence is some of the worst in the Darfur region since the civil war between the army and the paramilitary forces began almost exactly 2 years ago. The UN said killings were continuing at 2 large displacement camps, including the entire medical staff of Relief International, which was operating the only remaining clinic inside Zamzam camp. RSF forces were said to be burning buildings throughout Zamzam on Sunday, claiming they were seeking Sudanese government fighters hiding in the camps. The US has condemned both sides in the war, saying the RSF has committed genocide in Darfur and that the army has attacked civilians. The conflict has essentially divided Sudan in two, with the army holding sway in the north and east, while the RSF controls most of Darfur and parts of the south. Secondly, record number of migrants cross-channel in 2025 so far. Labor. Shamefulness. The number of migrants arriving in the UK after crossing the English Channel has reached a new record for the first 4 months of the year. Some 656 people arrived in 11 small boats on Saturday, taking the total number of people crossing in 2025 so far to 8,064, according to the Provisional Home Office figures. Listen to the experts. Less than halfway through April, this is already higher than 7,567 people who crossed the channel over the first 4 months of last year, a record high at the time. A Home Office spokesman said the government has a serious, credible plan to finally restore order to our asylum system, and it will stop at nothing to dismantle the business models of people smuggling gangs. A Home Office spokesman said, "We all want to end dangerous small boat crossings." Listen. We all want to end dangerous small boat crossings which threaten lives and undermine our border security. They said the government's plan includes tougher enforcement powers, ramping up returns to their highest levels for more than half a decade, and a major crackdown on illegal working to end the false promise of jobs used by gangs to sell spaces on boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillip described the figures as a national disgrace. And finally, some police forces unprepared for summer riots. I didn't get the memo. Police forces were in several cases unprepared for the level of violence that broke out in riots after the murder of 3 children in Southport last summer. Oh, that's what you're talking about. It left officers exposed to significant risk. The Home Affairs Committee said in this order that saw attacks on hotels. Let me start again. It left officers exposed to significant risk. The Home Affairs Committee said in this order that saw attacks on hotels housing asylum seekers and mosques. Don't get that. However, the report said the policing response was entirely appropriate given the violence and criminality, with no evidence to suggest two-tier policing. The police lead for the police lead for the national response, said the report rightly praises the efforts of officers and staff, adding the recommendations will be considered. Acknowledging this was the worst disorder the country had seen since 2011. MPs said police forces should have better anticipated the risk of disorder in general, following an initial instance of disorder in Southport. Officers across the country worked tirelessly. The report said, but forces being unable to act proactively left them exposed. A recommendation has been made for the Crown Prosecution Service to publish its new media protocol as soon as possible and keep it regularly updated after MPs found existing guidance was not fit for the social media age. And then talk about new media and the importance of it. Full circle. A government spokesman said they were working closely with police to both improve national decision-making and support for officers. Well done, Brent. You've got into the end. Football results over the weekend. In fact, let me press that my button here. Reaction. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So we had a few wins, a few losses, a few draws on the weekend. We had Manchester City beat Crystal Palace on Saturday 5-2. Brighton drew with Leicester City 2-2. Nottingham Forest lost to Everton 1-0. Or 0-1. Southampton lost to Aston Villa 0-3. Arsenal drew to Brentford 1-1. On Sunday, Chelsea drew with Ipswich Town 2-2. Liverpool won. They are going to be the champion. Against West Ham 2-1. Wolves played Tottenham Hotspur, and they beat them 4-2. And Newcastle played Manchester United, and Newcastle beat them 4-1. All right, then. That's the reaction. I don't think there was any boxing. Adelaide, I don't know how to pronounce that, wins British heavyweight title in controversial stoppage. I don't know if that is old news. That might be old news. That might not have been updated. I think that's old news. All right. I've done my due for the day. Let's get into the wrap up. Boom! All right. We've reached the end. Obviously, we spoke about Emmanuel's young self. This is when he was spitting bars, spraying bars and that. That's his ex in the picture. So I introduced you to that without saying anything, but now I've given you the context. Handsome mother effer. This is Fela Kuti, right? This is NWA over here. So he's on brand. Obviously, even with his ex. Anywho, so we spoke about a lot of different things, and we also focused our discussion today on whether experts should be listened to above non-experts on a particular issue. And it opened up into a wider discussion on, censorship and accreditation and all that lovely stuff. Terrence Howard even made a cameo through Kofi, right? That was corrected very swiftly. Jury's out on Terrence Howard, by the way. He's still asking for somebody to basically humble him, and nobody stepped up to the plate just yet. But I have a bias. I am willing to listen to people if they say they have the answer to reducing human suffering. So I'm always going to have that particular bias. But I don't understand one word Terrence Howard is saying. I have got no clue what he's talking about. I've got no clue what the expert, Eric Weinstein, is talking about either. That's not my forte. It's not my expertise. It's not. But I'm intrigued nonetheless. And this is the joy and the danger of consuming this type of content and not knowing what it is the truth is and what it isn't. Thank you very much for everybody tuning in today. This will not be the same tomorrow because we have people in. We also have two fantastic guests coming through. It's going to be a very, very good conversation. We have a returning guest host in the King's Monologue, Andrew, and he's going to be bringing somebody absolutely fantastic in order to educate the people, entertain the people, and elevate the people being blacks. I would say blacks, I'm talking about black adjacent, allies that love blacks, blackity black, don't come back. Everybody's interested in our culture. Tune in tomorrow and make sure you bring your notepads and your pens or your phones. We go get into it. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day. Peace.